Hey everyone, welcome to Paranormal M. I'm finally back at the mic to share some creepy paranormal stories with you, and honestly, I love doing this. Thank you so much for sending in and sharing your own paranormal experiences. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you don't miss any new videos from Paranormal M. Now, grab a blanket, put your headphones on, and let's dive into today's stories. So, let me tell you how this all started. I was staring at this blank page, right? Just a blinking cursor and a bunch of instructions about how to turn a story into a transcript. No characters, no plot, just rules. And I remember thinking, this is kind of like life sometimes. A lot of expectations, not a lot of clear story. But then I imagined you, listening. And suddenly, I didn't want to write something stiff or clever. I wanted to talk to you like a friend. So instead of obsessing over the right way to tell a story, I decided to just start where I was, with confusion, a little bit of laughter, and this desire to make you feel like you're sitting right across from me. You know, I used to think stories had to be perfect to matter. Neat beginnings, sharp turning points, tidy endings. Then I met a friend, let's call her Mira, who changed my mind. Mira had this habit of telling stories that always wandered off track. She'd start talking about a bad day at work and somehow end up describing a stray cat she fed 3 years ago. But the thing is, when she talked, everyone leaned in. Not because her stories were polished, but because you could feel her heart in every sentence. One evening, I asked her, "How do you do that? How do you make people feel so included?" She laughed and said, "I just imagine I'm talking to one person I really care about. The rest takes care of itself." And honestly, that's what I'm doing with you right now. I know on your side it's just words on a screen, maybe a voice in your head as you read. But for me, I'm picturing you listening while you're on a commute, or curled up in bed, or taking a tiny break from a long day. Maybe you're a little tired. Maybe you're looking for something gentle and human to hold on to for a moment. So here's what I want you to take from this strange little non-story story. You don't need a perfect script to be heard. You don't need dramatic twists to matter. You don't need to get every word right to be genuine. If all you have right now is a jumble of half-formed thoughts and a quiet wish to connect with someone, that's actually enough. You can start there. You can start messy and honest. Imagine you're talking to one person you care about. Really see their face in your mind. Imagine the way their shoulders drop when they finally feel understood. Then just speak to that version of them. Like I'm speaking to the version of you who needed to hear this today. And if you feel a little silly or unsure or not good enough at this kind of thing, you're in good company. I feel that way too sometimes, even now, telling this to you. But here we are anyway, sharing this small moment. So if you walk away with anything, let it be this. Your voice, exactly as it is right now, unpolished, a bit tangled, maybe even nervous, is still worthy of being heard. You are allowed to speak like you're talking to someone you love, even when that someone is yourself. Thanks for listening. Really. I'm glad you're here. So, let me tell you something that stayed with me my whole life. My first wife and I met in my first semester of college in this little Midwestern town back in 1984. I was a clueless freshman. She was in her third year, from a small town in Austria, studying English. Her name was Lena. I remember seeing her the first time in the language lab. She had this thick braid down her back and laughed with her whole face, like she didn't know how to hold anything back. I was supposed to be practicing my German verbs, but all I could think was, I really hope she talks to me. By my second semester, I'd been accepted into the state's study abroad program. I was going to spend a year in Europe, focusing on German and European history. Lena decided to finish out her semester and then go back home to Austria, so we'd be in the same country again. It felt like the universe was lining things up for us. We were young and impatient, and we got married in February of 1985 in a tiny chapel not far from campus. There were maybe a dozen people there. We were broke, nervous, and absolutely certain we were doing the right thing. 3 days later, she died in a car accident. She'd gone out to pick up some textbooks and study aids for me, German readers, a dictionary, a couple of history books. I wasn't with her. One moment I was worrying about quizzes and credits, and the next, my whole world had been ripped in half. I don't remember much from those weeks that followed. I remember a hospital room. I remember machines. I remember saying goodbye before they turned everything off. After that, it's mostly static, just flashes. I don't really have solid memories again until I was back in the States, weeks later, sitting alone in my old bedroom and realizing she wasn't coming back. For a long time, I had nightmares, vivid, brutal ones. I'd see the wreck, or I'd be stuck in the hospital corridor, unable to get to her room. I'd wake up shaking, sometimes yelling. It went on for years. Life did keep moving, though. Eventually, I remarried. Now I have a wonderful wife, grown kids, and grandkids who crawl all over me and call me Oppa. I love them with everything I have. The nightmares faded out slowly. Somewhere along the line, they just stopped. I haven't had one in close to 30 years. But I never stopped thinking about Lena. Not once. She's just woven into the background of my days. A thought in the shower, a song on the radio, the shape of a stranger's smile. Always there. And then, not too long ago, I had a dream that wasn't like any dream I've ever had. It didn't start like a nightmare. There was no crash, no hospital. I just was there. I found myself standing at the edge of this wide, sunlit meadow. The air felt soft, like late spring. And there she was. She looked exactly like she did when we were young, 21 maybe. Hair in that familiar braid, jeans, a loose sweater, that half smile she used to give me when she caught me staring at her. She was so clear, so solid looking, that my first reaction wasn't even joy. It was panic. I remember thinking, oh God, not again. I can't do this again. This is going to turn into a nightmare, and I can't watch her die one more time. I started trying to force myself awake, you know? That frantic feeling where you're telling your own body, wake up, just wake up. She saw the fear on my face, and instead of disappearing or turning into something awful, she just walked up to me, took my hand, and said softly in German, "Komm, mein Liebchen." Come, my darling. She led me into the middle of the meadow, to a little clearing where the grass was flattened, as if someone had already been dancing there. And then we did dance, slowly. No music I could hear, but somehow we were moving in perfect time. I could smell her, that faint mix of shampoo and the soap she liked, and just her. I could feel the warmth of her cheek against mine. My hand on her back didn't pass through her or fuzz out like it does in a normal dream. It felt real, solid, alive. We danced for what felt like 15, 20 minutes. We didn't say much at first. We just held each other. I kept thinking, if this is a dream, don't let it end. Please don't let it end. Eventually, we sat down on a wooden bench that had somehow appeared there in the meadow. It looked a little worn, like it had been waiting for us for a long time. And then we talked. And talked. More than I can probably remember or put into words now. At one point, she reached back, pulled the tie out of her braid, and shook her hair loose. She used to do that when she came back from classes, right before collapsing on the couch with a book. Seeing it again almost knocked the air out of me. Then she asked, "Do you remember that we were supposed to go to my Uncle Franz's apartment for Abendessen the evening I died?" And she held up a little scrap of paper with an address scribbled on it. I had completely forgotten about that. It was like she'd reached into a locked drawer in my brain and opened it. Then she brought up the Monsignor who ran our student housing, how furious he'd been when he realized we were living together before marriage. We used to sneak in and out, trying to make it look like we had separate rooms. She imitated his voice, wagging her finger, and we both just lost it laughing. In the dream, I laughed so hard my ribs started to ache. And again, it felt real. Not like dream laughing, like your stomach actually hurts and you're wiping tears from your eyes. We got quiet after that, just sat there on that bench in the middle of the meadow. At some point, we both started crying. Not noisy sobs, just tears. The kind that come when you've held something in for too long. She turned toward me and said, "I'm okay. I've been with you all these years." She said the number, 39 years, like she'd been counting right along with me. "I'm happy you found someone to love. I'm proud of the man you still are, even with all that has happened. I don't regret anything." I remember saying, "I'm old now. Look at me." And she smiled and said something like, "You're still you. That's what matters." We stood up and danced again, this time slower, even softer. We held each other like people who know they don't have much time. Eventually, a large car pulled up at the edge of the meadow, a dark, old-fashioned kind of car with a driver in a cap. No one said anything like, "Your time is up." It just felt understood. We climbed into the back seat together. The car started moving, and the world outside the windows began to shift. We drove past places from her life that I'd never seen. The street where she grew up, the cafe where she said she'd spent hours studying, a lake she'd once mentioned, but we'd never visited together. Then we passed places we had known together, our campus, the cheap little diner where we'd split pancakes at midnight, the tiny chapel where we got married. After that, the scenes changed again, and I saw bits of my life after her. The hospital where my son was born, the playground where I pushed my granddaughter on the swing, the house I live in now with my wife. It was like we were taking a tour of both of our lives, stitched together into one long, continuous journey. I wanted to tell her so many things. I don't even know if I said any of them out loud. I just remember the feeling, this enormous, aching love, mixed with a peace I hadn't felt in decades. The next thing I knew, I was awake, in my own bed, morning light coming through the curtains, my heart pounding, tears on my face. I lay there with this overwhelming sense of love, like I'd just been wrapped in it, and at the same time, this strange guilt washed over me, like I'd somehow cheated on my wife by having that dream. It was such a human, messy feeling. Gratitude and sorrow and confusion and love all tangled up together. I'm 58 now, and I've never had another dream like that. Not before, and not since. I've had dreams about her, sure, but nothing anywhere near that clear, that detailed, that present. I woke up with every moment etched in my mind, the way you remember an actual event, not just a dream. You can call it a dream if you want. Maybe that's all it was. But to me, it felt like she'd been given one evening to walk back into my life, to remind me of things I'd forgotten, to tell me she was okay, and to let me know, really know, that love doesn't just vanish when a body does. Whether it was real in any scientific sense almost doesn't matter. To me, it was a visit from Lena, and I carry that meadow, that dance, that car ride with me now. right alongside the life I've built since. So let me take you back for a moment. I must have been around 11, maybe not even 12 yet. It was school vacation, one of those blazing hot afternoons in Suriname when the sun feels like it's leaning right down on your shoulder. But you don't care because you're a kid and life is just good. There were about 8 of us that day, me, a bunch of cousins, and some kids from the next street over. We were playing hide and seek near the forest trail at the edge of our village, just where the houses stopped and the bush and the rice fields began. If you ever spent part of your childhood in Suriname, you know that feeling, right? Bare feet dusty, sweat on your neck, and somehow it's still the best day ever. That's exactly how it was. We'd been laughing and shouting for hours when I suddenly heard this scream. Now listen, we had been noisy all day. Screaming, teasing, calling out, all of that. But this scream was different. It cut through everything. It had real fear in it. You can feel that, you know? It lands somewhere in your chest. It was my cousin. Back then we called him Bubo. Everyone did. And the second we heard him, we all froze, just for a moment, and then started drifting toward his voice, kind of huddling together as we went. "Hey, come, he's coming, Bubo shouted. We ran to where he was, under this huge old mango tree that stood right by the edge of the forest. He was staring straight up into the branches, eyes wide, body stiff. You know when someone is so scared they don't even move? Like that. Naturally, we all followed his gaze, and what we saw. To this day, I still get goosebumps when I think about it. Slowly, very slowly, something was climbing down from the top of that mango tree. A man. Or at least, that's what it looked like. Hands, feet, moving from branch to branch. His clothes looked just like my uncle's. My uncle Ramesh, the one who had died. Let me pause there for a second. A little while before that, during the previous rainy season, Uncle Ramesh had hanged himself from that very tree. Nobody ever really understood why. The adults whispered, the kids were told to hush, and life just kind of rolled on, the way it does. But we all knew he had ended his life there, on that mango tree. So now, standing under that same tree, looking up, and seeing that figure climbing down, dressed like him, every few seconds he would tilt his head and look down at us. And those eyes, that's what I remember most. They weren't like normal eyes. It's hard to explain. They looked empty and heavy at the same time, like they had seen too much. Have you ever looked into the eyes of a dead person, even just at a funeral? That feeling, it's not something you forget. Uncle dead, one of the younger kids screamed. It's his spirit. He's coming for us. He's going to kill us, another one cried. And just like that, panic exploded. Nobody needed instructions. We just ran. In every direction. Away from the tree, away from the forest, away from those eyes that felt like they were following us. I'm not going to pretend to be brave here. I really thought I was going to pee my pants. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Some children sprinted straight to their own houses. The rest of us, the ones closest to my yard, ran into the first open gate we saw, and that happened to be ours. We burst into the house, all shouting different versions of the same story. He was coming down. He looked at us. My mother, my aunts, neighbors, adults came rushing in from everywhere, trying to make sense of this bundle of screaming, shaking children. Everyone talked at once. Some cried. A few of us refused to go back outside at all. Pretty soon, almost all the adults from that part of the neighborhood had gathered. They argued back and forth for a bit, but they all agreed on one thing very quickly. No child was allowed to play anywhere near that mango tree again. Ever. Honestly, they didn't even need to say it. You didn't have to tell us twice. On our own, we wouldn't have gone near that tree if you paid us. Later, the Pandits, Hindu priests, were called in to deal with my uncle's restless spirit. The grown-ups said that because Uncle Ramesh had taken his own life, his soul hadn't been able to find peace. It was still attached to that place, to that tree, wandering and troubled. So the priests came. We children weren't allowed to be there for most of it, but you know kids, we listen from around corners, from behind half-closed doors. And later I heard the full story. One evening, just before dark, the Pandits put plates of food and glasses of drinks under the mango tree. Rice, vegetables, some sweets, and a little cup of rum, things my uncle used to enjoy when he was alive. The next morning, all the food was gone. Now, you and I, we can say maybe the dogs took it, maybe some animal from the forest, right? But back then, in our little world, people said, his spirit ate it. He accepted it. The following day, they held a special prayer service for him at my grandmother's house. The living room was full of incense smoke and the sound of Sanskrit prayers. That same night, very late, the Pandits went back to the mango tree to perform more sacred rituals. They lit lamps, chanted mantras, and asked for his soul to be guided to a peaceful place. 2 days later, the adults told us, "It's all right now. The tree is safe. Your uncle's spirit has found peace." Maybe they believed it fully. Maybe they were trying to calm us down. Maybe both. But let me tell you honestly, we children didn't trust that tree again for a long time. For at least 6 months, we made sure our games stayed closer to the houses, where the light from the windows reached us and we could hear our mothers calling. You don't see something like that and then just carry on as if it was nothing. That kind of fear settles in your bones. There was something else, too. Before my uncle died, that mango tree was famous in our neighborhood. The sweetest mangoes. People would come by just to ask, "Auntie, any mango today?" Kids would climb the branches, fill their shirts with fruit, sit and eat until juice was running down their arms. After all of this, those mangoes stayed untouched. For years. They would fall to the ground, soft and golden, and just lie there for the birds and the insects. Even the bravest among us would look at them and say, "No, you take it." And then nobody would. Time passed, of course. It always does. People got older. Children grew up and moved away. Little by little, someone would pick a mango, then another, and eventually life wrapped itself around the story, the way new roots wrap around old ones. But every now and then, when people start sharing ghost stories in the cool of the evening, someone brings this one up, the mango tree at the edge of the village, and the uncle who didn't quite leave when he died. And as we like to say in Suriname when we tell these stories, let people share their stories in peace. We don't wish to disturb you, so please, don't disturb us either. So, let me tell you what happened with my dad and the house in Suriname. My father lives in the Netherlands. He's one of those people who works themselves to the bone. Extra shifts, weekends, all of it. For years he saved, and his big dream was to build a beautiful house back home in Suriname. Not a mansion, but a solid 2-story house with a big veranda and tiled floors that he was really proud of. Because he only goes to Suriname once a year for vacation, he didn't want the house sitting empty. So he decided to let his favorite brother, my Uncle Lionel, live there. That way someone could look after the place. And honestly, who do you trust more than your own brother, right? My dad had full confidence in him. He always said, "Lionel is different. He has a good heart." He never imagined, not even for a second, that this would cause problems. So Uncle Lionel moved into the brand new house. Everything was fresh. New paint smell, new furniture, new everything. And whenever my father would come to Suriname, he stayed there too, in his own house. Or at least, that's how it was supposed to feel. But here's where things started to get strange. Every time my dad came to Suriname and slept in that house, he got really sick. At first, it was small things. Stomach issues, headaches, feeling weak. We all thought, okay, maybe it's the heat, maybe the food, maybe just travel stress. But it kept happening. Every trip, same house, same sickness. One day, my uncle looked at him and said, almost casually, "You know, maybe you shouldn't come to Suriname anymore. Just leave the house to me. I'll take it over. This country clearly isn't good for your health." The way he said it, I still remember the look on my dad's face. He forced a little laugh, but his eyes were sad. He told him, "No, that will never happen. I'm not giving this house away. I worked too hard for it." He said, "I didn't pick this money off a tree. I gave blood, sweat, and tears for this house." You could hear the pain in his voice, because Suriname was his dream. He always said he wanted to spend his old age there, sitting on his own veranda, drinking his coffee and listening to the birds. But because of this strange illness that kept returning, that dream started to feel impossible. The last time he went on vacation, things got really bad. He came back to the Netherlands, and usually once he was home, he would slowly recover. But this time, he didn't. In fact, he got worse. He slept almost the entire day. He was constantly nauseous, throwing up, running to the toilet, having chills, headaches, and sharp pains all over his body. He was just drained. I would look at him and think, this is not my dad. This is a shadow of him. We went from doctor to doctor. Blood tests, scans, you name it. Every result came back perfect. The doctors kept saying, "Medically, we don't see anything wrong." But you don't need a degree to see when someone is dying on their feet. One afternoon, one of my dad's old friends, a guy named Sanjay, came to visit. He took one good look at my father and said, "No, this isn't normal. Come, I'm taking you to someone. A spiritual worker. She can see what's really going on." So we went to see this Luku woman, a spiritual healer, in Amsterdam. I went with him that day because I didn't want him to go alone. When we walked into her place, she just stared at my father for a moment. She didn't even touch him at first. Then she said quietly, "You came just in time. If you had waited one more day, you might not be here." She told us my father was under spiritual attack, that someone had used dark magic on him. She said there was a Jorka, a restless spirit, on him, and also a Bakru, a mischievous spirit. She explained that together they were draining him, bit by bit. She also said she knew exactly who had sent it, but she refused to say the name. She said, "For my own reasons, I won't call the person, but it has to do with a house. Someone wants what belongs to him." And in that moment, we all knew what house she meant. She told my father that he had eaten something that had been prepared for him spiritually, that whatever he had consumed was still in his body, sitting in his stomach like a curse from the inside. The takroe sanyi, the dark work, was literally eating away at his health. Her advice was clear. He needed a wasi, a spiritual cleansing bath, to remove the demonic influence and break whatever was attached to him. My father didn't believe it at first. He's stubborn, and he grew up hearing these stories but never really took them seriously. He just sat there, shaking his head, saying, "No, man, that can't be it. Maybe I just have some infection they haven't found." But honestly, looking back, it felt like even his mind was being blocked, like he couldn't see what was right in front of him. I was scared. I looked at him and said, "Papa, please, we've tried everything else. What do you have to lose? I don't want to lose you." After a lot of convincing, he finally agreed. He took the spiritual bath that same day. I stood outside the room while they prepared everything and guided him through it. And I know this will sound dramatic, but I'm telling you exactly how I experienced it. When he came out, he looked different. His eyes, he straightened his back, and for the first time in weeks, he made a real joke. It was like someone had switched the light back on inside him. In the days that followed, his energy came back so fast it was almost hard to believe. He started eating again, sleeping normally, walking outside. He kept saying, "I haven't felt this good in years." That's when he made up his mind. He picked up the phone and called my uncle in Suriname, Uncle Lionel, and told him, very calmly, "The house has been sold. You need to move out." The reaction. You'd think someone had stabbed him. He exploded. He started screaming, cursing my father in the foulest way. It was like a different person talking. He yelled that he wasn't going anywhere, that my father was ungrateful, that the house was basically his. And he didn't move out. Not for a long time. Even after repeated requests, he refused to leave. My father had to hire a lawyer, start legal procedures, send official letters. It drained him emotionally and financially. While he was still recovering, he had to fight this battle with his own brother. Before all of this, they were close. My dad loved him so much. He used to send him big boxes from the Netherlands, clothes, food, little things he thought his brother might like. If Lionel needed money, my father tried to help where he could, even though life here is not easy. It's not like we're swimming in euros. But my uncle acted like we had money trees in the backyard and that handing him a house worth a fortune was no big deal. He fought over that house like he had paid for even one brick. He hadn't. It broke my father's heart. His sleep disappeared. The stress came back, the sadness, the worry. Even though his health was improving spiritually, emotionally, he was bleeding. We got the news that my uncle had suddenly become very ill. No accident, no warning. He just woke up one day and couldn't move. He was paralyzed, completely dependent on others. He couldn't walk, couldn't care for himself, nothing. He couldn't stay in that house anymore. They had to move him out. Not long after that, the legal process finished and the house was officially sold. Now, I'm not here to convince you of anything. You can believe it or not. But I know what we saw, and I know what we lived through. People think using black magic makes them powerful. They feel big for a moment because they can hurt someone from a distance, in secret. But there's something they always forget. The devil always comes to collect his payment. That's what happened to my uncle. He used dark forces to make my father sick, to push him out of his own house. But in the end, those same forces turned around and hit him. One day he was fine, the next he was paralyzed, and the doctors couldn't find a clear cause. We knew the spiritual side of the story. When you play with that kind of darkness, sooner or later, you pay. Today, my father wants nothing to do with his brother anymore. When he visits Suriname, he doesn't greet him, doesn't look his way. As far as my dad is concerned, that brother no longer exists. And you know, that's the part that hurts the most. Not the house, not the money, it's the betrayal. To see someone you love so deeply, your own flesh and blood, be willing to destroy you out of greed. My father still sometimes talks about building another house in Suriname one day. Another dream home, maybe in a quieter area, with fruit trees in the yard. But for now, after everything that happened, he's careful. He moves slower. He trusts less. And I don't blame him. You know, by now, after everything I've been through, I've pretty much gotten used to seeing ghosts. I don't say that lightly. I mean full-on spirits and strange little entities just showing up. In the hallway, in the kitchen, at the foot of my bed. I've had them appear while I'm brushing my teeth or when I'm trying to fold laundry. There was a time when I honestly thought I was losing my mind, that I was just seeing things. Growing up with that feeling was rough. It's hard to trust yourself when everyone else would chalk it up to imagination. But as I got older and things kept happening that I simply couldn't explain away, I realized, no, I really am seeing them. And weirdly, that realization has taught me a lot about myself. I've learned there are people, living and dead, that I can help, and there are some I just can't. Some spirits honestly don't realize they're dead. Others know exactly what happened to them. The ones who know sometimes love to be dramatic about it, showing up with the same injuries they had when they died, just to spook whoever's around. Others prefer to appear as they were in life, calmer, softer, more themselves. And then there's Elias. Elias has been, well, he's been a lot of things. A protector, a smart-mouthed roommate, and a better friend than many of the living people in my life. He's helped me through so many dark nights and dealt with spirits who were very much not friendly. He's not perfect. He's stubborn, he hides things, and I know he carries more secrets than he'll ever say out loud. But when I needed someone, he was just there. Living with Elias is its own adventure. He's from another time, literally, so sometimes he slips into the way people spoke when he was alive. Then he'll suddenly throw in some modern slang he picked up from TV or my husband, and it becomes this bizarre mashup of old-fashioned politeness and TikTok phrases. There are moments when I just stare at him like, I need subtitles for whatever you just said. Even in death, he's picked up little human habits. I'll catch him wandering around the house barefoot, shirt untucked, completely out of the crisp uniform he usually likes to appear in. The oddest thing he does, though, is when he just lies down next to me on the bed, on top of the covers, and starts talking. About his life, about mine, about things he's seen. It's strangely comforting, like having a friend sitting with you in the dark. Then there's his brother, Leonard. Leonard is the complete opposite. Where Elias can joke and relax, Leonard is proper to the point of being painfully formal. You will never see him in any state of undress. His collar is always neat, his posture perfect, his words carefully chosen. He does not approve of the way people talk nowadays. The casual swearing, the slang, the way we interrupt each other. Leonard has attached himself to my mother-in-law. He's fiercely protective of her. I think she reminds him of his own mother. Even Elias, as laid back as he can be, treats her with a kind of old-world respect when she's around. I know for a fact they've both followed her to work before. At first it was mostly Elias, making sure she got there and back safely. But lately, Leonard has taken that job very seriously. When she's home, he often positions himself where he can stand between her and, well, whatever he thinks might harm her. He gets frustrated when he can't help with her stress or take away her worries. He can see the burdens she carries, but there's only so much a spirit can do. And then we have little Rosie. Then there's Noah. Noah is another young one, and he's very particular about who he interacts with. He pretty much refuses to engage with anyone except Leonard and Rosie. He'll peek around corners, watch us from doorways, then vanish the second we look directly at him. He seems to trust them more than he trusts any of us who are still breathing. And finally, there's the young man we simply call Sage. He's indigenous, quiet, and very watchful. Sage rarely leaves my mother-in-law's room. Most of the time, he stands by her window, looking out as if he's on guard. I don't know his full story, but there's a seriousness about him, a sense of responsibility. He doesn't say much, at least not to me, but his presence is steady, protective, grounded in a way the others aren't. Most of the time, you wouldn't even know we share our home with spirits. If you walked in on an average day, you'd probably just see a regular house that needs to be vacuumed a little more often. Unless you're sensitive to them, you'd miss most of what's happening. You might catch a shadow moving in the corner of your eye. You might hear a soft footstep in an empty room. Every now and then, if they really want to be noticed, you might see one of them clearly. Living with them means their presence is always there, like a quiet background hum. They're never really far away. They make little sounds, sometimes not so little. Doors creak open or shut. Something falls in a room where no one is. Lights flicker. Every now and then, they get bored and move things, hide things. I've had entire conversations across the house with someone I thought was my husband, only to realize he wasn't even home. They're very good at mimicking our voices. One of them will call my name in a perfect imitation of a family member, and I'll answer, only to realize I'm completely alone in that part of the house. It's unnerving, but at this point, it's also familiar. It's just life with them. They are my ghosts, my strange, mismatched, otherworldly little family. And honestly, I'm happy to keep them around for as long as they want to stay. So, where I live now, there are, I think, 4 lighthouses along this stretch of coast. Don't hold me to that number, I always lose track. 2 of them are pretty close together, practically neighbors, and the others are spaced out farther up the shoreline. Of the pair that sit near each other, I've really only spent time at one of them. It's the easiest one to reach. Nice parking lot, little path, very family day trip vibes. Easy doesn't mean gentle, though. That place is every bit as haunted as you're probably hoping it is. The first time I went up there, we were walking past the old keeper's house and the cluster of outbuildings. It was one of those gray coastal days where the clouds feel low enough to brush your hair. As we passed the keeper's house, I suddenly felt watched. Not just a little curious glance either. It felt like a whole crowd pressed up against invisible windows staring out at me. I could feel men, women, and a few kids. The feeling of them wasn't scary, more like that quiet, watchful energy you get in an old museum where people are used to just observing. I'm used to spirits watching the living, so that part didn't really rattle me. But from one of the upper rooms of the house, there was this other presence. A woman. Sharp, focused, furious. She felt like hot metal, controlled but on the edge of snapping. She was not happy I was there. It wasn't a go away feeling so much as a how dare you walk past my window kind of anger. I noticed her, clocked that fury, and just didn't engage. I turned my attention back to the path and kept walking toward the lighthouse. Now, like a lot of lighthouses, this one is surrounded by cliffs. Beautiful, dramatic cliffs. The kind you see on postcards. And, unfortunately, the kind people still jump from. To be fair to whoever's in charge of the place now, pretty sure it's the state working with the Coast Guard. There's a fence up around the worst drop-offs. There are warning signs too. Danger. Keep out. Fines posted for crossing the barrier. They've even put up a couple of those signs with the suicide prevention hotline. You can tell someone has tried, really tried, to make it safer. But you and I both know signs don't stop everyone whose mind is already made up. Over time, I've seen a few jumpers there, but only as ghosts. I've also seen spirits of people who clearly just didn't respect how slick those wet rocks can get. The sea doesn't care if you slipped by accident or jumped on purpose. Since that first visit, I've learned bits and pieces about that particular lighthouse. Some of its local lore, some might be half-remembered history, so take it with a grain of salt. But here's what I've been told. There was a keeper whose wife supposedly threw herself from the cliffs after finding out he'd been unfaithful. Another woman, she wasn't connected to the lighthouse staff at all, came there because her husband never returned from a voyage. She she too is said to have jumped. Some of the children I feel around the property are believed to have died from illness or from playing too close to the cliffs and falling. There's talk of at least one keeper who died of sickness, worn down by the isolation and the weather. And then there's the darker story. One keeper who, according to the rumors, killed his wife and child inside the lightkeeper's house. No one can agree on the exact details, but the story lingers like a stain. I can't tell you which of those tales are historically accurate, but I can tell you what I've personally experienced there. My friend Milo, he's sensitive too, will sometimes talk softly to them. He doesn't always get clear answers, but the energy around him shifts, like they're grateful someone sees them. Inside the keeper's house, there is something very negative. I don't mean grumpy old man energy. I mean heavy, oppressive, like walking into a room that hasn't forgiven anyone for anything. I can't say for sure it's connected to that murder story, but the house feels saturated. That angry woman in the upper room, I'm pretty sure she's part of it. And then there are a few entities around the grounds that I can't categorize. They don't feel like former lighthouse staff, and they don't feel like lost tourists. They're just there. Old, watchful, hard to read. The woods around the lighthouse are their own story. If you walk past the keeper's house and into the trees, it changes. The air gets still in that way where you suddenly become aware of every twig under your feet. In those woods, I've felt the steady, quiet gaze of indigenous people. There's respect there, but also caution, like they're watching to see what kind of visitor you're going to be. I've also picked up on soldiers, men in old uniforms, disciplined but tired, lingering around shapes and shadows that feel like buried buildings. There are some half-swallowed foundations out there, tucked into the undergrowth. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some kind of small tactical fort there at one point. It would explain the military energy, the feeling of strategy hanging in the air. As for the indigenous spirits, I think we both understand why they're wary. This land remembers what was done to them. They have every right to watch us from the trees. And then there's something else in those woods. That one I can't pin down. Sometimes I'll get the sense of a large presence moving between the trunks, bigger than a person, lighter on its feet than it should be. It doesn't feel cruel, just deeply elusive. It could be a woodland spirit. It could be something older than any of the human stories tied to the lighthouse. Or, and I promise I'm not joking here, it could be a Sasquatch. Whenever I try to really focus on it, to get a clear read or even catch a good look, it vanishes. The feeling just, poof, slips out of reach, like it was never there at all. I live in Washington State, so the idea of Sasquatch being out there doesn't feel far-fetched to me. I believed in Bigfoot long before I moved here. I grew up near the Appalachian Mountains, and the woods there have their own tall, dark shapes and unexplainable sounds. The Pacific Northwest just feels like a continuation of that mystery. More moss, more fog, same old secret. So that's my lighthouse. On the surface, it's a pretty little tourist spot with a gift shop and informational plaques. But if you stand still long enough, if you let yourself really feel the place, you'll notice you're not alone. You're sharing space with heartbroken women, curious children, stern keepers, wary warriors, and something enormous slipping between the trees, just out of sight. And somehow, knowing they're all still there makes the beam of that lighthouse feel even more important. It's not just guiding ships anymore. It's watching over everyone who never really left. So, since it's Halloween, well, whatever you call it, All Hallows Eve, Samhain, I figured I'd finally tell this story out loud. Halloween has always been my favorite day of the year. Always has been, probably always will be. I've had a lot of weird stuff happen on this night, like more than my fair share. but this one still makes my stomach twist a little when I think about it. So, picture this. I'm about 16, living in this small city. Not tiny, not huge, just big enough to feel like there's always someone awake, and small enough that you still know which houses give out the good candy. That night, I was out with a bunch of my friends, doing the usual Halloween nonsense. Costumes, trick-or-treating, stealing each other's candy, jumping out of bushes to scare kids who were younger than us. That was mostly them, not me, just for the record. I like to pretend I was the responsible one. Growing up, I technically had a curfew, but my dad was pretty relaxed about it on holidays. The funny thing is, I'm usually in bed by 10 like someone's tired grandparent. But that night I decided, very dramatically, that I was going to stay up as late as I could. No way was I going to be the first one to tap out and go home. Yeah, bad plan. Now, here's something about me you kind of need to know for this to make sense. I've always been, let's say, sensitive. I pick up on things other people don't. And I've had a spirit hanging around me since I was a kid. His name, well, the name I use for him, is Ezra. Ezra's not some evil thing. He's more like this grumpy, overprotective roommate who lives in the corner of my life. He's pulled me out of bad situations more than once. So as long as I knew he was nearby, I usually felt safe, even when stuff got weird. That night started out totally normal. The city streets were packed with kids. Porch lights were glowing orange, fake cobwebs everywhere. My friends were loud and chaotic in that way only teenagers in costume can be. And I remember thinking, okay, it's Halloween, the veil's thin, but I've done this before. I'll be fine. And besides, Ezra was there, right? At some point, maybe around 11, I started to feel done. My feet hurt, I was tired, and the sugar rush was turning into a sugar crash. I reached out, in that quiet way I usually check in with Ezra, just sort of feeling for him. Nothing. It was like someone had closed a door in my head. He was just gone. I remember stopping on the sidewalk and thinking, okay, that's weird. But I didn't say anything because what was I going to do? Turn to my friends and be like, hey guys, my ghost friend dipped, I think I should go home. Yeah, no. Most of them didn't know about Ezra, and I really didn't feel like being the crazy one that night. Right around then, someone got the brilliant idea that we should walk to the abandoned cemetery on the edge of town and hang out there. You know, just for the vibes. Now, quick side note. Despite what movies tell you, graveyards aren't always the most haunted places. Most of the time, they're just quiet. I've spent enough time in rural areas to know that the creepiest places are usually old roads and houses, not cemeteries. But the second they said old cemetery, my stomach dropped. Still, I went along. Because of course I did. I've felt watched plenty of times in my life. This was different. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. My shoulders got tight. It felt like something was pacing us, just outside the reach of the streetlights. I kept telling myself, it's Halloween. It's probably just your nerves. I tried to convince myself maybe it was Ezra being dramatic, trying to spook me for fun. So I looked around, expecting to catch a glimpse of him. Not the way you'd see a full body or anything, but just a shift in the air, a familiar shape. Instead, every so often, I'd see eyes. Not glowing red, not some cartoon demon thing, just eyes. Too high up, too still, watching from the darker pockets between houses or above a fence line where nothing should have been tall enough to stand. And I did what a lot of us do when we're scared and don't want to admit it. I ignored it. We got about a block away from the cemetery, and I just stopped. The others kept walking for a few steps before they realized I wasn't with them. I was staring straight ahead at the gate. Now, in the daytime, that cemetery is sad and a little overgrown, but it still looks like a cemetery. On Halloween night, under that thin, watery streetlight, The gate looked wrong. It wasn't just old or rusty. It felt like something was standing in it, or maybe using it. Like the gate was a mouth held slightly open and something was waiting on the other side. The feeling that came off it was pure malice. Not playful trickster energy, not a harmless spirit curious about living people. This was the kind of cold that feels like it has teeth. I told my friends very calmly that I didn't want to go in, that we should just go home and watch a movie or something. Of course, they immediately called me a chicken. And look, I was scared. I'll own that. But I also grew up with one older sister and a cousin who basically treated dares like a religion. I was not about to back down in front of a bunch of loud-mouthed teenagers in plastic vampire teeth. So my friends, being absolute menaces, decided that since I was so scared of the graveyard, the only solution was obvious. They dared me to go through the gate alone. What I should have said was, "If you're so brave, you go first." What I actually did was square my shoulders, mutter something like, "Fine," and march right up to it. And here's the part where I did the single dumbest thing I have maybe ever done. I walked straight through it. Not through the gap in the gate. Through it. Through the thing that was standing there. The second I passed that threshold, everything shifted. The air felt heavier, thicker, like I'd stepped underwater. The night sounds, crickets, cars in the distance, my friends laughing, just cut off. It went so quiet my ears rang. When I looked back at the gate from the other side, it didn't look like the same place anymore. The iron didn't look rusty and broken. Now it looked sharp, like it was newly forged. The path ahead of me wasn't just a cracked walkway. It was this dark, narrow lane that seemed to drop down instead of up. And all along either side of it, in my mind, flashed these awful images. I hesitate to call anything a demon, because I think that word gets tossed around too much. But whatever I walked through that night, it was not human, and it was not friendly. As I stood there, it hit me. Not physically, in my head. I started seeing my family, my friends, people I loved, impaled on pikes, torn apart, screaming. Not like a horror movie you watch from a distance, but like I was standing right there, helpless. And the worst part? It was just flashes, but each one felt too real. Every time I blinked, there was more blood, more screaming, more of that horrible sense that this thing was trying to show me. Look what I could do. Look what you'd have to live with. Behind me, I could feel it. That same presence I'd walked through at the gate. Close enough that if it had hands, they would have been hovering right above my shoulders. For a second, I tried to convince myself that Ezra would yank me out of there like he'd done before, that he'd swoop in and snap whatever this was like a twig. But Ezra wasn't there. It was just me and this thing that wanted inside my head. That's when I finally did the smart thing. I ran. I spun around and bolted back the way I'd come, heart pounding, half expecting the path to stretch out forever, or the gate to slam shut in front of me. But somehow, my feet hit gravel, and then sidewalk, and then I was back on the street, gasping. My friends were standing there, wide-eyed. One of them said something like, "Where the hell did you go? You were gone for like an hour." Now, I don't know if that was them messing with me, or if time actually got weird in there. I just remember feeling this ridiculous surge of relief that I could hear cars again, that I could see the normal, ugly chain-link fence on the far side of the road, that the sky looked like a sky and not some endless black ceiling pressing down on me. I told them I was done. No more dares, no more graveyards, no more wandering around in the dark. I was going home. They argued for a minute, but I think they could see in my face that something was wrong, because they eventually let it go. When I finally got back to my room and shut the door, That's when Ezra came back. He didn't show up gently either. The first thing I felt from him was this wave of anger. Not at me as a person exactly, but at how reckless I'd been. For days afterward, every time I reached for him, I got this mix of worry and frustration. The way someone yells because they love you and you scared them half to death. And honestly, he was right. To this day, I can't fully explain what happened. I don't know if I literally stepped somewhere else, or if that thing pulled part of me into its space, or if it just messed with my mind so badly that reality bent around us for a bit. What I do know is this. Every now and then, usually around this time of year, I'll be walking alone at night and feel that old sensation, eyes on me, just beyond the streetlights. Something testing the edges of my defenses, looking for a way back in. But it doesn't get to stay. Ezra doesn't let it. And I don't walk through gates I don't recognize anymore. So yeah, that's my little Halloween PSA for you. If you ever get to the edge of some place and every instinct in your body suddenly goes, nope, not there, listen to it. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Trust me on that one. So I want to tell you about a couple of things that happened to me. Things I still can't fully explain. Some of it's kind of spooky. Some of it's really emotional. But hey, we'll walk through it together, okay? Growing up, I learned something that I didn't really have words for back then. Not every spirit shows up to scare you. Some feel like they're just there, watching, maybe even protecting you. My childhood was shaped by the ghost of a little girl in a nightgown we called Ellie. But adulthood? That brought someone much more personal into the picture, what I can only describe as my guardian angel. These are a couple of my paranormal experiences. So picture this. Some neighborhoods have these perfect little cul-de-sacs, right? Kids riding bikes in circles, sprinklers going, neighbors waving from driveways. Mine had that too, but it also had something else. Something you couldn't see, but you could definitely feel. I swear, our whole block was haunted. The first time I saw her, I was sitting on the couch with my older sister Kayla, waiting for it to be time to walk to the bus stop. The TV was on, some goofy cartoon playing in the background, when we both heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, steady, heavy enough that you feel it more than hear it. We both turned our heads toward the stairs, and there she was. A little girl in a pale nightgown, long hair hanging down, quietly walking down the steps like she'd lived there forever. Halfway down, she stopped, turned, and looked right at us. We just froze. Then my sister and I whipped our heads toward each other like, "Did you see that too?" We looked back and nothing. No girl, no movement, just the empty staircase and the sound of the TV. That was the beginning. A few years later, there was this stormy night I'll never forget. Thunder, rain smacking against the windows, the whole dramatic thing. My sister and I were curled up in my bed, watching a movie. This was before streaming everything. We had one of those cheap DVD players humming on the dresser, blue light glowing in the dark. The room was pretty much black except for that TV glow. I was starting to drift off, fighting to keep my eyes open, when I saw someone walk in front of the screen. You know how a shadow passes by and the light disappears for a second? It was like that, only it didn't feel like a quick pass. It felt deliberate. The light vanished, and then click. The entire room went dark. "Hey!" I yelled, assuming Kayla had turned the TV off as a joke. Right then, my dad shouted from down the hall that the power had gone out. And then I heard my sister's voice coming from the living room with my parents. She wasn't even in the room with me. My stomach dropped. Because if that shadow wasn't my sister, then who just walked in front of my TV? Another time, I was walking past the basement door. It was cracked open, and I caught a glimpse of her again, just out of the corner of my eye. The same small figure, the same pale nightgown. I backed up so fast I nearly tripped, then forced myself to look straight into the basement. Nothing. Just the dark stairway, the little pull chain light swaying gently, and that faint smell of laundry detergent drifting up. Over time, my sister and I talked about it so much that we decided to give her a name. We landed on Ellie. Naming her made her feel less like a monster and more like, I don't know, another kid on the block who just never left. And it wasn't just our house. It was totally normal. Cozy, even. Then there was a knock at the front door. Without thinking, both my sister and I yelled, "Come in!" The doorknob turned. The door creaked open super slowly, like someone was pushing it just a little at a time. Then suddenly, slam. It flew open the rest of the way and smashed into the back of the couch so hard it bounced and swung halfway shut again. We all just stopped. My aunt, my sister, me. Spoons in midair, music still playing, cookies half mixed. Nobody laughed. Nobody made a joke about the wind. We just traded that "did you see that" look. And nobody went to check the door for a long minute. Even my friend Maya, who lived 3 houses down, had her own stories. One night, my sister and I were sleeping over at her place. We were in the living room on the floor, surrounded by blankets and snack wrappers, when we heard footsteps above us. Heavy ones, pacing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Thing is, Maya didn't have an attic you could walk around in. Just one of those crawl spaces, the kind that's too low for anyone to stand up inside. You couldn't pace if you wanted to. But those footsteps kept going. We lay there holding our breath until they finally stopped. Maya, trying to act chill, was like, "Oh, that's just the man who lives up there." She'd even given him a name, Victor. She said it like it was half joke, half not. Eventually, it started to feel like the whole block was haunted, like every house had its own secret resident. Years later, I found out why. My grandma had a friend who also grew up on that same street way back in the day. One afternoon, we were all talking, and my grandma's friend mentioned a little girl named Ruthie who used to live there in the 1950s. Ruthie had gotten really sick, leukemia. Back then, treatments weren't what they are now. She died young, in a backyard not far from where my house was. Ruthie. For years, my sister and I had called our little nightgown girl Ellie, and Maya called her ghost Victor. Different people, different names, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why did we all feel like there was someone there? Why did that same stretch of road feel so heavy, like it remembered things it wasn't supposed to forget? Was Ellie actually Ruthie? Or someone else entirely? I still don't know. But here's the thing. That little girl, whoever she was, had nothing to do with my guardian angel. That part of my story showed up much later. In 2019, I was in a terrible car accident. There were 4 of us in the car, driving way too fast, around 90 miles an hour, on a road we had no business speeding down. We lost control and went straight into a cinder block wall. The sound. I'll never forget it. It felt like the world ripped in half. Metal twisting, glass exploding, bodies jerking forward like rag dolls. It was bad. So bad they sent helicopters. Not just one, multiple. They flew each of us to different hospitals across the state. None of us even ended up in the same place. 2 of us survived, but not in the same way we'd been before. My best friend was paralyzed from the chest down. Another friend's brain was damaged so severely that his mind never fully came back, stuck at the level of a small child. They were alive, but changed forever. And me? By all logic, I shouldn't have walked away from that. Honestly, I shouldn't have even been alive. Here's where it gets weird. I never wore my seatbelt. Like, ever. It was a terrible habit, I know, but that's just the truth. I'd get in, shut the door, and that was it. But that night, maybe 2 minutes before the crash, if that, I clicked my seatbelt on. Click. And that click is the only reason I survived. Even with the seatbelt, I was wrecked. My hip was broken. My jaw shattered so badly that the surgeons had to wire it shut. I was living off liquids through a straw for weeks. I ended up in a wheelchair for about a month. I had burns on my arm and knee from being trapped in the car while part of it caught fire. I remember the feeling of heat, how it felt like the flames were reaching for me, and then the rush of air and voices as somebody finally pulled me out. Recovery was brutal. My body hurt. My brain felt foggy. My spirit was just tired. But I was alive. And everyone kept saying the same thing. That seatbelt saved your life. But I knew, deep down, I hadn't put it on alone. Here's why. Back in 1999, 20 years before my accident, my dad's younger sister, my Aunt Carla, died in a car crash of her own. She'd been under the influence, just like I was that night. I never met her. She died before I was born. But I grew up on her story, on the hole she left in my dad's life, on the way his voice changed when he talked about her. For as long as I can remember, Aunt Carla was this mix of a warning and a legend. Someone I loved without ever knowing, and someone whose choices everyone prayed I wouldn't repeat. Lying in that hospital bed after my accident, face swollen, jaw wired shut, body covered in bruises, I couldn't shake this feeling that she had been in that car with me. Not in a creepy way. Not like the little girl on the stairs. More like someone who refused to let history repeat itself. Maybe she knew my dad could survive losing his sister, but he could never survive losing his child. Maybe she saw me doing exactly what she once did and decided, no, not this time. I don't know if she whispered in my ear. I don't know if she nudged my hand. I don't know if she buckled that seatbelt herself. All I know is that something made me do what I never did before. As a kid, I thought that little girl in the nightgown was the biggest mystery of my life. Was she real? Was she Ellie? Was she Ruthie? Or was my imagination just stitching shadows together and calling them a person? But after the wreck, my questions changed. Why did I put on my seatbelt that one night when I never did? Why did I live when I had every reason not to? Was it just random luck? Or was there someone in that car with me? Someone who understood exactly how this story could have ended because she'd already lived it? I can't prove any of it. All I know is this. On one street as a kid, I met a ghost who watched from the stairs. And years later, on a dark road in a speeding car, I think I met an angel. And she wore my aunt's name. Hey guys, it's me again, Mr. Paranormal M. Can't sleep again? Same here. Don't worry, I've got you. I got stung by a bee on my arm today, but luckily it didn't mess with my favorite thing, hanging out with you and talking spooky stuff. So, grab your headphones, get comfy, and let's talk about some weird, supernatural stories. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and send me your own experiences too. I love reading them. Thanks so much for supporting me and the channel. I hope you like my voice because I really love doing this. All right, good night, and let's get started. Okay, so this happened a few months ago, and I'm just going to tell it to you the way I lived it, as honestly as I can. That day started really normal. I went out to eat with my mom, Maria. We were at this little diner we go to sometimes, just sitting in a booth by the window. And like most times, she slipped into that familiar pattern, talking about people, worst-case scenarios, appearances, who's failing at what. I was trying so hard to think of good, light things to talk about, but every time I shared something, it felt like it just slid right past her. No real response, no curiosity, just this wall. That part isn't even the main story, but I remember feeling it very strongly that day. She started talking about my sister, let's call her Lily, in this really negative way, twisting things, making herself look like the hero and everyone else look irresponsible or ungrateful. It was like everything she said had this subtle spin on it. None of it was an obvious lie I could call out, but the vibe was just off, amplified, almost like something was leaning on her words, pushing them further than usual. Eventually, she drove me home, dropped me off, and the night went on like normal. Then I went to sleep, and I woke up in this nightmare. In the dream, I was in an empty industrial part of a city at night. No people, just those tall metal buildings and flickering streetlights. I walked into this run-down warehouse, roof half collapsed, broken windows, dust in the air. And the second I stepped inside, I felt it. Something is wrong, deeply wrong. It wasn't just dream creepy. It was this heavy, urgent awareness, like my soul suddenly knew something. My mom is lost. I have to find her. That thought hit me like a siren. It wasn't optional. It was like someone pressing a red-hot spoon to my skin, this loud, constant alarm that wouldn't let up. Right as that feeling started, Lily and a few of her friends stepped out of a side room in the warehouse. They were laughing, swaying, moving in this weird, slow, snake-like way, almost like they were dancing to music I couldn't hear. They looked like my sister and her friends, but I knew they weren't. Something in me just knew. They were smiling, all casual, and they were like, "Stay with us, just hang out. Everything's fine. Nobody's missing. Let's just have fun." Their voices were oddly melodic, like they were reciting lines on a stage. I told them, "No, I have to find Mom. She's missing. Something's wrong." And that feeling in my chest just kept screaming. It wasn't fear of the dark. It was this pull, this hunger to find her that drowned everything else out. I wasn't even scared of the warehouse itself. I was just desperate. The next part of the dream is fuzzy. I'm wandering down alleys and along loading docks, pushing open doors, peering into corners. Everything is dark, but I'm not panicking. I'm searching for what feels like hours. Then I loop back to the warehouse. I go inside again, and Lily and her friends are still in that room, drinking, still moving in that slow, winding way. But this time the urgency inside me is multiplied. It's like the hot spoon has been pressed harder into my skin. I start yelling, "Don't you feel that? Doesn't anyone feel that? Something is wrong. Mom is gone. Can't you feel it?" And they just smile at me, still swaying. In this strange, almost sing-song tone, they tell me again to calm down, that everything's fine, that I should relax and stay. In the dream, I'm still reacting as if my sister and her friends are really them. So I step between them and the windows and I shout, "Don't look out there! Don't look!" I'm guarding the glass with my arms spread out, and then I hear it. These guttural, inhuman screams echoing all around the outside of the warehouse. Not like crowds, but like one being, screaming from different angles. The sound bounces from spot to spot, right side, roof, far wall, like it's circling us. Same voice, many locations. It felt organized. Lily and her friends start moving closer, brushing my arms with those weird, snake-like movements. They're pleading, but not in a scared way. more like eager children. "Move your hands, let us see. Come on, move your hands." Like they wanted to see the horror, like they loved it. That feeling inside me turned from urgency into this cold, sick unease. And right there, I woke up. I remember thinking, that felt demonic, not like a random weird dream. I prayed about it, sat with it for a bit, and then I tried to just continue my day like normal. Later, my mom called, asking if I wanted to hang out. I thought, okay, that's already interesting timing, but I said yes. She picked me up and we headed to a casino for a little day trip. We're on the highway, and suddenly she goes, "Oh my God, I have to tell you about this dream I had last night." The second she said dream, my stomach dropped. All the feelings from my nightmare rushed back. I tried to keep my voice calm and said, "Really? Me too. You go first." I wanted to see if there were any connections before I told her mine. She says she dreamed she was stuck somewhere, trapped. It was dark, and no one could find her. As she's talking, she points to one of those big orange highway barrels on the side of the road and goes, "It was like that. Like 3 of those stacked up, and I was in a black tube underground. And when I looked down, I could see big hooves walking up to check the tube, like something with goat legs was pacing around above me." She couldn't see the full creature, just the legs, but she knew it was evil. I was shocked. When she finished, I told her my dream about the warehouse, the blood, searching for her, the fake version of Lily, everything. And she just kind of shrugs and says, "That's so weird, because I fell asleep watching Dawn of the Dead last night. They were hiding out in this warehouse while zombies ripped people apart." So on one level, my brain could go, okay, maybe I unconsciously picked up that she watched a zombie movie in a warehouse, and my mind spun it into something else. That alone would have been strange, because I truly didn't know she'd watched it. But the parallels were a lot. And it doesn't stop there. For context, I've been studying spiritual stuff for a long time. I used to be really deep into occult and New Age things, like for almost 15 years. Over time, I came to believe Jesus Christ is real, is the Son of God, and that his name and his authority are actually what pushes back the darkness. I've seen prayers in his name stop things I can't explain in any other way. I've been talking to my mom about Jesus more and more, and honestly, I do worry about her sometimes, about some choices, some patterns. And I started to notice something. The more I brought him up, the more strange, unsettling spiritual stuff would happen around us. Almost like something wanted me to shut up and back off. Anyway, we get to the casino. My mom kind of brushes off the whole dream thing. She's like, "Yeah, that was weird," and then moves on. Meanwhile, I can't stop replaying it in my head. The warehouse, her dream of being trapped, the hooves, the movie she watched. On the way home, we stopped at a gas station. We're at the counter paying, and this man walks in. I've never seen him before. He's wearing a fishing hat, a plain t-shirt, and those rubber fishing boots that go up to mid-calf, like he's about to wade in a creek. My mom stiffens immediately and nudges me. Under her breath, she says, "There is something wrong with that guy, something evil. I don't know why. Do you feel it?" I instantly start praying the name of Jesus in my heart, quietly. I just told her, "I'm praying now. Let's go." We left, and in the car she said he made her feel like something from the nightmare, like the presence in her recent dream. I took note of that, deeply. The thing is, this guy wasn't doing anything outwardly strange, just standing there in this fishing outfit. But both of us felt that same off, heavy vibe. That night was uneventful. I went home, slept, woke up. The next day, I went out for coffee with my boyfriend. Let's call him Evan. As we're driving down the road near my house, I get this weird, subtle nudge to look up. Walking along the sidewalk? The fishing hat guy. I didn't say anything at first. I just watched him as we drove past. Then Evan casually goes, "Oh, that guy, he's weird. He comes into our store all the time and says creepy stuff and laughs." Evan works at a tobacco shop in town, so he sees a lot of characters. I asked, "What kind of stuff does he say?" He told me the guy comes in, doesn't buy anything, just walks around and cackles, saying, "I've got some stuff to return," while looking around at everyone. There are signs everywhere in the store that say, "No returns." When he told me that, I just thought, that is such a classic villain line, like something out of a horror movie. I've got some stuff to return, and he thinks it's hilarious. At that point, I started to quietly piece things together. I was like, okay, if this is just a guy, he is very likely under the influence of something dark, whether he knows it or not, because his sudden appearance, right after these intense demonic-feeling dreams with my mom, right after the gas station encounter, was too precise to shrug off as nothing. I told Evan the whole story. My dream, my mom's dream, the warehouse, the hooves, the gas station, the fishing hat, all of it. He kind of brushed it off with, "Nah, he's just some dude on drugs." I get why that's an easier explanation, but my spirit wasn't buying it. Then came day 3. So now we're 2 days out from the original warehouse dream. It's the middle of the day, and I'm thinking about going to the dispensary, but I start feeling weird, lightheaded, off balance. As I'm walking down the hallway to grab my keys, I'm actually wobbling a little, like I'm a tiny bit drunk, but I'm not. Evan offers to drive me, and for some reason I get stubborn and prideful about it. I basically snap, "No, I've been doing this by myself forever. I'm fine." Looking back, I was being kind of a jerk, probably from built-up resentment and stress. Just being honest. I go out to my car, sit in the driver's seat, and this wave of dread washes over me. Not normal anxiety, not overthinking. This felt like a clear message. Do not go. I sat there arguing with myself. You're overreacting. You're being dramatic. Just go. Stop being weird. I didn't want to be ruled by fear, so I pushed through it. I started the car, drove to the stop sign at the end of my neighborhood, and turned right. The very moment I turned, maybe 10 yards ahead, walking straight toward my car on the sidewalk, was the fishing hat man. Again, it was subtle, but undeniably wrong. My whole spirit just went, absolutely not. I did a quick turn, circled around, and drove straight back home. I didn't go to the dispensary. I didn't pass him again. I was done. And then, I didn't see him for months, which is bizarre because Evan swore this guy came into their shop all the time. I drive through town constantly, and yet I had never seen him before those 3 days, and then not again after, for a long stretch. But that's not quite the end. The last time I saw him, it was almost like one final note at the end of this weird song. I met up with an old friend I hadn't seen in at least 10 years. We'll call him Jonah. We got coffee, caught up, talked about life. Out of nowhere, he brought up dreams and spiritual stuff, good and evil, weird experiences he'd had. So I told him about the fishing hat guy. As I shared, I could see him getting visibly uncomfortable, like his body recognized something about it. On the drive back to my place, we're chatting, and suddenly Jonah goes, "Oh my God, it's him." I look up, and there he is again. The same man in the fishing hat, walking along the road that leads to my neighborhood. Just there. Again. No chance for me to point him out first. Jonah saw him on his own. and that was the last time. I haven't seen him since. I don't tell this story to scare anyone or to make myself sound special. I honestly have nothing to gain from sharing it. I tell it because I really believe some of what we write off as just dreams or just weird coincidences may actually be part of something deeper, spiritual warfare, for real. If you've had strange, layered experiences like this, dreams lining up with real life, repeated symbols or people that feel wrong in your spirit, I just want to gently encourage you. Protect yourself. For me, that meant turning away from the occult and New Age things I was heavily into for nearly 15 years and turning toward Jesus. I've learned, slowly and stubbornly, that Jesus Christ really is the Son of God, and His name actually carries authority over darkness. When I pray in His name, when I speak His name over fear or over something that feels evil, things change. I've seen it. So if any of this hits something in you, if you felt that same hot spoon of warning in your spirit, please don't ignore it. Talk to Jesus. Ask Him for protection. Read about Him. Use His name when you feel that heaviness or terror pressing in. Because evil is real, but so is He. So, I'm 23 now, but this all kind of starts when I was a little kid. When I was about 7 or 8, my aunt, her name's Carla, went to see this psychic in town. You know, one of those cozy little places with the beaded curtain and too much incense. She got the whole session recorded. Back then it was on this little silver USB drive, and she gave it to me because I was obsessed with mysterious things, even as a kid. Of course, I lost it. I was a child with the attention span of a goldfish, so that tracks. But I do remember listening to it at least once, and I remember this very clearly. My aunt asked the psychic about me, like specifically me, and the psychic said I had psychic abilities, but I wouldn't really understand them until I was older and learned more about it. At the time, I was just like, whoa, I'm basically in a movie. Then I went back to cartoons and snacks and forgot about it. Fast forward to now, I actually brought it up with Aunt Carla recently, and she said she remembers that reading too. She said she still believes it's true, that there's something about me. She's very matter-of-fact about it, which makes it creepier, honestly. Here's the thing though, I don't blindly believe every psychic. I feel like a lot of it can be a money grab. Maybe some people are really gifted, I won't say they're not. But I do believe in spirits, or ghosts, or whatever you want to call them. Even as a kid, I used to get that feeling that someone was watching me. Not always in a bad way, but definitely in a "you are not alone right now" kind of way, even when I was totally alone. The house I grew up in was weird from day one. We moved in when I was about 6. My mom, her name's Elena, had the place blessed by a priest literally the first week. The reason? On the wall in the living room, there was this carved upside-down cross. Not like a crooked nail or something you could explain away. It was carved there, right in the center of the wall. She freaked out, obviously. She had it removed, patched over, painted, and then called a priest and a medium. The medium told her that the previous owners had died in a fire in that house. We didn't really know what to think at the time, so my mom just kind of nodded and made that worried mom face. Years later, maybe 5 years after we moved in, we redid the floors. When they pulled up the old flooring, the wood underneath was completely black, charred, like something had really burned badly in there. The main structure hadn't been replaced though, which made it even stranger. It was like the skeleton of the fire was still there under our feet. Anyway, growing up in that house, there were always corners that felt darker. Not just the light doesn't reach there dark, but heavy dark. I'd be totally fine, and then suddenly I'd be furious or crying for no reason. just out of nowhere, like something had pushed a mood button in me. Around that time, I started having these recurring dreams, or what I'm pretty sure was sleep paralysis. In the dream, I was trapped in this big, unfamiliar house. A black figure, no face, just this tall, shadowy shape, would chase me from room to room. I'd run, desperate to find a way out. I always ended up at this hallway with a door at the end. I'd throw the door open, and the room would be full of spiders. Like, full. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, just crawling. But the only exit was through the window in that room. Every time I had that dream, it ended the same way. I'd wake up, but my body wouldn't move. I'd try to scream, and nothing would come out. Just silence. It felt like I was stuck between the dream and being awake. Later, my mom told me she also had recurring dreams about spiders when we lived there. Nothing else. No shadow figure, no house. Just spiders, over and over. It was so dark. You know how sometimes a corner just doesn't look like regular shadow? It looked like the light stopped right before it touched that space. I felt frozen. I wanted to get up and turn the lamp on, but I was honestly scared to move. It felt like something was standing in that corner, just quietly observing. The next morning, I told my aunt about it, kind of laughing it off, and she got upset. Not at me, but at what I was saying. She said she'd felt something off in that apartment too, but was trying to ignore it. After that, she saged the whole place, and I didn't feel that heaviness again when I visited. It was like the air lifted a little. Now, fast forward to more recently. Last October, I was diagnosed with ADHD. Suddenly, my whole life made a lot more sense. I started taking Adderall to help with my focus because it was really messing with my work and school. I also started a medication for prediabetes. I'm mentioning that because I know medication can come with side effects, and I've been wondering if that's part of what's happening to me now. A few months ago, I moved into a condo with my boyfriend. Let's call him Daniel. It's a nice place, nothing obviously creepy about it. But almost as soon as we settled in, my temper started getting bad. Like, really bad. I'd snap over tiny things, get super emotional, cry over the smallest stuff. And that's not really me. At least, not how I used to be. I kept telling my aunt that something just felt wrong at the condo. Not like the firehouse exactly, but familiar in that I'm not alone right now way. She gave me a bundle of sage and told me to cleanse the place when I felt ready. And I just haven't. I don't know if it's because part of me wants to see if more happens, or if I'm scared that doing it will make things worse, or confirm that there actually is something here. We also have a puppy now. Her name is Luna. She's about 6 months old, and usually really happy and fearless. A couple of weeks ago, it was around 8 p.m., and I was sitting on the couch with her. She suddenly perked up and started whining at the window. At first I thought she heard a car or someone outside, but then she freaked out. She jumped over my legs, tried to wedge herself between me and the back of the couch, and kept whining like she wanted to disappear. I went to the window and looked outside. Nothing. No people, no animals, nothing that made sense for that reaction. And Luna has heard plenty of outside noises before without doing that. A couple days after that, I came home from work and went to let her out of the bedroom. The door would only open about 6 inches. Just enough for her to squeeze out, but not enough for me to get in. I pushed harder, thinking maybe something had fallen behind the door. It wouldn't budge. I kept forcing it, and it felt like I was shoving against something heavy. No movement. So I reached my hand through the gap to feel around behind the door. There's nothing there. No boxes, no laundry basket, nothing blocking it. And the moment my hand is in there, the door suddenly just swings open. Smooth. No resistance at all. Like it had never been stuck. I checked the floor, the bottom of the door, everything. No scrape marks. No sign that anything had caught or dragged. Maybe the floor is warped or something, but there was nothing to actually prove that. And then this morning happened. I slept a full 8 hours, but woke up feeling exhausted, like I hadn't rested at all. I went down to the parking garage to get my car. It's one of those big underground garages, over 100 cars, echoey, with those circular mirrors at the corners so you can see around them. I tell myself I imagined it. Start walking again. Glance at another mirror. And there it is again. A person-shaped movement behind me. Turn around. Nothing. Just rows of cars and silence. That's when my brain started really spiraling. Like, okay, am I losing it? Is this the Adderall? I even Googled the side effects. It can cause hallucinations in rare cases, apparently. So now I'm stuck in this weird place of, am I seeing ghosts? Or is my brain glitching? Part of me is terrified that I'm actually seeing something spiritual. Another part of me is terrified that I'm not, and it's all in my head. So that's where I'm at right now. I've got this history of weird, heavy houses, dreams, feelings. My aunt's psychic telling her I'd have abilities I wouldn't understand until I got older. And now my puppy is reacting to things I can't see. Doors are behaving like someone's holding them shut. And I'm seeing people in mirrors that aren't there when I turn around. I'm honestly starting to freak out a bit because I can't tell what's real. I don't know if I'm just sensitive to energy and spirits, or if my mind and meds are messing with me. I'm sorry, I know this is a long ramble. I just needed to get it all out. I'm hoping maybe someone out there has gone through something similar, whether it turned out to be spiritual, medical, or somewhere in between, and can tell me how they handled it. Because right now, I'm stuck between sage in one hand and a pill bottle in the other, trying to figure out what's actually haunting me. So, this has been happening to me since I was about 7. For almost 30 years now, I've had these reoccurring dreams about, I'll just call them demons, or really bad spirits, pretending to be people I love who have passed away. And before you think I'm totally off my rocker, let me give you a little background. Ever since I was a kid, I've been able to lucid dream, like full-on realize I'm dreaming, change the scenery, wake myself up, the whole thing. And twice when I was younger, once around 8 and once as a teenager, I'm pretty sure I astral projected. Both times I woke up, floating above my own body, just in my room, seeing myself sleeping. It only lasted a few seconds, but it felt way too real to be just a regular dream. On my mom's side, the women have always had something, a kind of sixth sense. My mom, my aunt, my grandmother, they all get these strange premonition dreams, or they'll just know things before they happen. Nobody's out here doing formal witchcraft or anything, but there's definitely a psychic streak in the family. So when I was about 7, my great-great-grandmother passed away. Her name was Elise. A few days after she died, I saw her in our hallway. Just once. I was wide awake, walking past my bedroom, and there she was, soft, kind of glowy, just watching me with this gentle little smile. I didn't feel scared at all. To this day, that's the only time I've ever seen something like that with my eyes open. Not long after, I had a dream that I'm convinced was really her visiting me. In the dream, we were sitting at the kitchen table from my childhood home, sunlight coming in through the window. She held my hand, and I could feel the warmth and the love so clearly. The whole thing was calm and peaceful, and specific in a way that normal dreams just aren't. I woke up feeling comforted, like she'd come to say goodbye. I've had a couple of dreams like that with my grandfather too. His name was Daniel. Same feeling. Warm, clear, very him. It didn't feel like symbolism or random brain noise. It felt like a visit. But then, things shifted. Sometime after that sweet dream about my great-great-grandmother, I had another one with her in it. Except this time, I knew right away it wasn't her. In that dream, I was a kid, standing in this weird, dark version of our living room. Everything looked almost right, but slightly off. The colors were dull, and the air felt heavy. Elise, well, what looked like Elise, walked toward me. At first, she seemed normal, but the energy around her was wrong. It was like my body knew before my mind did. She grabbed my wrist and said, "You have to come with me. Now. You have to go." Immediately, my whole body went into panic mode. I started screaming and pulling away. The warmth was gone. What I felt coming off her was pure malice, cold and hungry. Her face started changing, stretching in ways a face shouldn't. Her eyes went too dark, her mouth twisted, and she snarled at me. Not like an angry grandma, like an animal. She began dragging me, and I was fighting her with everything I had, screaming and crying, until I jolted awake, actually sobbing in my bed. That was the first time I realized, okay, something's messing with me. This isn't just weird dream stuff. Fast forward to when I was about 22. I had another dream where someone tried to come in as a loved one. This time it was my grandmother. Let's call her Nana Rose. In the dream, it was early morning. I was lying in bed in my adult apartment, the way my room actually looked at the time. The light coming in from the blinds was that soft, grayish morning light. The door opened, and Nana Rose walked in. She sat down on the edge of my bed. She leaned toward me and said slowly, "Let me in." Just those 3 words. Let me in. And right then, I knew. This was not my grandmother. I said, "No, you're not Nana." Her face twisted so fast it was like a glitch. 1 second it was her face, the next it was this distorted snarl. She started screaming at me to let her in, over and over, like it was furious I'd called it out. I don't remember all the details after that, just that I kept saying no and refusing, and there was this tug-of-war feeling, like it was trying to get closer, trying to push into me somehow. Eventually, I woke up with my heart racing, but also kind of weirdly proud of myself because I hadn't given in. There have been several dreams like that between then and now. They all blur together a bit. It's always some loved one who's passed, an uncle, a cousin, a friend, showing up in a place that feels almost like real life. And as soon as they get close, I feel that awful energy. They act sweet for half a second, then it turns. There's always this pressure, this push to let them in, or go with them, or agree to something. Sometimes I wake up shaking. Sometimes I wake up just really annoyed. Which brings me to last night. Someone I care about passed away about 3 weeks ago. Let's call her Nina. In real life, her passing is still fresh, still painful, and I've been thinking about her a lot. In the dream, I was lying in my current bed, in my current room. Everything was extremely accurate, like down to where my phone charger usually is, and the way the curtain never quite closes all the way. I was on my side, facing the bedroom door. Then I felt the bed dip behind me, like someone had just sat down. I rolled over, and there was Nina, sitting on the edge of my bed, smiling. I said her name. "Nina?" She smiled wider, but it was the wrong kind of smile. Too fixed, too shiny. And that familiar, awful feeling swept over me. That thing in my gut that just knows, this is not her. But this time, instead of pure terror, I just got mad. I sat up, glared at her, and said something like, "You're not Nina. Stop it. I'm done with this. You don't get to use her face." The image of her flickered a little, like a bad video connection. Then it laughed. Not Nina's laugh, this low, mocking sound that almost echoed. Again, that pressure to let it in came back. It didn't say the exact phrase this time, but I could feel the intention. Like it wanted access, into me, into my space, into something. I just kept repeating, "Go away. You're not welcome here. Leave." At one point, it told me its name. I don't remember all of it now, but I remember it started with an R and sounded old, like something out of a mythology book. The moment it said it, I had this instinctive sense that I shouldn't repeat it. So I didn't. Eventually, in the dream, I got out of bed, walked right past it, and went into the hallway. It stayed sitting there, just watching me, still smiling that wrong smile. I walked into the living room where my mom was. She's very much alive, just to be clear. And I blurted out, "There is this fucking thing in my room pretending to be people I love. It won't stop." My mom, in the dream, looked at me like this was totally normal information. No shock, no confusion. Just this calm, steady look, like, "Yeah, I know." Not long after that, I woke up. So, that's where I'm at. I've had enough of these that I can't just shrug them off as weird dreams anymore. I'm not super religious, but I do believe that there are things out there, energies, entities, whatever you want to call them, that aren't exactly friendly. I don't know if these dreams are actual entities trying to mess with me, or if they're just my subconscious acting out my fears around loss and death and attachment. I do know that I've also had plenty of dreams with past loved ones that feel totally neutral or even silly, like my grandfather showing up just to comment on my terrible parking in a dream. Not everything feels like a visit, and not everything feels dark. Some are just dreams. But then there are these other ones, the ones that feel like something knocking on the door over and over, wearing the faces of people I miss. And every time now, I'm learning to say no. No, you can't come in. No, you're not who you say you are. No, you don't get to use their memory to get to me. Maybe it's demons. Maybe it's trauma. Maybe it's a mix of strange family intuition and a brain that likes to dramatize. I honestly don't know. What I do know is that the older I get, the less scared I am, and the more angry I feel when it happens. Like, if you're going to come for me, don't hide behind the people I love. So that's my little saga with dream entities wearing my loved ones' faces. I'm still trying to figure out what it means. But for now, every time they show up, I look them in the eye, whatever eye they're pretending to have, and I tell them, "You're not welcome here, and you don't get to use my love against me." So, okay, let me just take you back for a second. This was like 15 years ago. I was a teenager from the US on a school trip to Paris, and of course one of the big stops was the Louvre. You know, we're in France, so we have to be cultured now kind of thing. I remember this one moment really clearly. My friend, let's call her Mia, and I were at one end of this long hallway. The hallway had these big open archways all the way down, leading into different rooms. The only way in and out of that whole stretch, though, was at the two ends. You walked in at one end, walked through the rooms, and eventually popped out into a larger open area. So, layout-wise, it's important. Unless someone walked right past us, they weren't getting out. Anyway, Mia and I walk into one of the rooms off this hallway. There are paintings everywhere, people shuffling around, the usual museum quiet. And then I see him. There's this man standing a few feet away, dressed in what looked like period clothing. Don't ask me which period, history has never been my thing. But he looked like he'd stepped out of some painting about a war or a royal court. Long hair tied back neatly with a black ribbon or bow at the nape of his neck. Dark coat, kind of old-fashioned boots. The kind of outfit you absolutely do not see on a random Tuesday at a museum. He's just standing there, staring at this painting on the wall. I wish I could tell you which painting it was, some landscape or maybe a portrait, but I honestly don't remember. All I remember is him. The second I saw him, I got this weird feeling in my chest. Not fear exactly, just an alertness. Like my brain went, pay attention, this is important. So I kept watching him, and out of the corner of my eye, I realized Mia was watching him too. We didn't say anything to each other. We were both just kind of locked in on this guy. After a minute, he finally turned away from the painting and walked calmly through the opening into the next room. And without even talking about it, Mia and I kind of did that quick, awkward power walk after him. You know when you're trying not to look like you're following someone, but you absolutely are? That was us. We step into the next room, and he's gone. Like, gone. The room was not crowded. There were a few people scattered around, but definitely no man in period clothes with a black bow in his hair. We scanned the whole space, and there was nowhere he could have ducked behind. A bench, maybe a column, but nothing that would have hidden someone that completely. We look at each other, both thinking the same thing. Okay, maybe he moved fast. Maybe he went into the next room. So we keep going. We speed walk through that next room, and the next one. We're moving down this whole stretch of gallery, peeking left and right through each opening, checking the hallway itself, looking for this guy. Nothing. And again, the way this part of the museum was laid out, there was basically one route. To get out, he would have had to walk either directly past us or down that same long hallway and into the big main area at the end. We reach the end of the hallway, step out into the larger space, the big open area with high ceilings and more people milling around, and start scanning the crowd. Still no sign of him. No old-fashioned coat, no odd-looking boots, no long hair tied with a black bow. It's like he just never existed. At this point, my heart is racing a little, but I'm also trying to be logical about it. Maybe we just missed him somehow. Maybe there was a side exit we didn't notice. I'm already starting to second-guess myself, and I'm just standing there beside her, nodding, realizing that we hadn't actually talked to each other about what we saw before she started retelling it. We hadn't had time to compare notes, to influence each other's memories, any of that. But her version matched mine. Her mom, of course, gives us that "you two are being dramatic" look, and basically says we're imagining things. Teenagers, overactive imaginations, too much excitement, whatever. And that was it. That was my big ghost encounter. I was around 15 at the time. Part of me wants to say, I know what I saw. I saw a man, and then he vanished. But the logical side of my brain keeps chiming in like, come on, you probably missed a door, or he blended into the crowd, and your brain just filled in the gaps later to make a better story. You know, for the plot. Thing is, it doesn't feel like a made-up memory. It feels anchored. I can still picture the hallway, the lighting, the slight chill in the air, the way my stomach dropped when he wasn't in the next room. I remember the way Mia looked at me, wide-eyed, before we broke into that ridiculous fast walk down the hallway. And ever since then, I've occasionally gone down these rabbit holes online, looking up ghost stories about the Louvre. There are definitely some out there, but I've never found anything that matches this man. The way he was dressed, the black bow in his hair, the way he silently stared at that painting like nothing else existed. So, yeah, that's my story. My maybe ghost, maybe weird coincidence, maybe my brain being overdramatic museum encounter. I'm totally open to it being torn apart by logic. Honestly, that might be comforting. But there's still this little part of me that believes I really did see something, or someone, that didn't quite belong to our time. So, let me tell you about something that still gives me chills, in a good way. This all started a few years back. My grandfather, we all called him Granddad Eli, had this tiny Facebook account that my younger cousin Maya set up for him. He could barely work the TV remote, never mind a smartphone. But he was so excited about the idea of finding old friends on the internet, as he put it. He loved the idea that with just a few taps, he could see photos of relatives on the other side of the world. Most of the time, though, he'd just point at the screen and say, "Who's that again?" And we'd help him. He passed away in 2020. We knew it was coming, so we made sure someone was always with him. One of those nights, I was sleeping on a little mattress on the floor next to his bed. At some point in the early hours, he started shaking. I think it was a seizure. He made these soft, broken crying sounds, and my heart just dropped. I ran out and called the nurse as fast as I could. She came in, calm and professional, and gave him an injection in his left arm. I remember that moment in such sharp detail. He started howling in pain, this deep, raw sound that I still hear sometimes when I think about it. His eyes had been closed the whole time. Then, suddenly, he opened them, and he looked straight at us, at me and at Maya, and he smiled. Not a big grin or anything, just this gentle, peaceful smile. But it was so clear. He looked like someone who had finally set a heavy bag down after carrying it for too long. There was this calm in his face I'd never seen before. Then he closed his eyes again. The nurse gave a second injection in his right arm, and this time, he didn't cry out. Everything just quieted. After he passed, I stepped out of the room to call my cousin Lena to tell her. She couldn't be there with us. When she picked up, I hadn't even gotten the words out properly before she said, "You're not going to believe what just happened." She'd been sitting in her car in a parking lot, windows closed, engine off. Out of nowhere, a small, pale feather appeared on the center of her lap. No breeze, no open doors, no reason it should have been there. She just stared at it. And when I told her, "Granddad's gone," she started crying and said, "I think he just came to say goodbye." I like to believe that was his way of sending a bit of peace to the ones who couldn't be there in person. It felt like something he would do, quiet and subtle, but somehow unmistakable. Fast forward a couple of years. Lena was going through a really tough time. You know those seasons when everything feels wrong, and you're not sure if you've ruined your life or if you're just lost. She'd been talking to Granddad in her prayers, asking him, "Am I on the right path? Am I doing this right? Please, just give me a sign." One evening, I get a message from her on WhatsApp. Did you do something with Granddad's Facebook?" I told her no, of course not. We hadn't touched that account in ages. She sends me a screenshot. It's a friend request from my grandfather's old Facebook account. She taps through to check. It's 100% his profile. Same old profile picture we'd taken of him in the garden, same spelling of his name, same list of a few relatives as friends. No changes, no new posts. Nothing weird in his activity. Just this one friend request, to her. At this point, I start messaging the family group chat. "Hey, does anyone still have access to Granddad's Facebook? Did someone log in? Did anyone send Lena a request as a joke or something?" One by one, everyone replies. No, no, no. Nobody had the password. Nobody even remembered the email we used. We checked. No new posts on his profile. No messages sent to anyone. No other friend requests. To this day, we have absolutely no explanation for it. We never recovered a password, never saw any other activity. It was like his account just reached out once and then went back to sleep. And honestly, I'm still in awe. That's why I'm sharing this with you. I'm not here to convince you of anything in particular. Maybe you think it was a Facebook glitch, or some strange technical fluke, or even a hacker, though I really don't think it was. But however it happened, the timing, that's the part I can't shake. Lena was praying, desperate and lost, asking my grandfather if he could just let her know she wasn't alone. And then his name pops up on her phone, asking to be her friend again. She saw exactly what she needed to see, exactly when she needed to see it. For me, that's what matters. Whether it was something spiritual or something that could be explained with enough code and logic, it arrived as a sign to her. It brought her comfort. It reminded her that she was loved and that someone, somewhere, was still watching over her. And if you've lost someone and you're listening to this, I hope you can take a bit of peace from it too. Sometimes the way a sign arrives doesn't matter as much as the way it reaches your heart. So, I'm sitting here on the couch, still kind of buzzing, and I figured I might as well talk this out while the adrenaline is wearing off. About 20 minutes ago, I had my first real sleep paralysis episode. So, I'm having this totally normal dream, nothing dramatic. I think I was at a grocery store arguing with a self-checkout machine. And then, like someone flipped a switch, I wake up. Or at least, I thought I woke up. I'm lying on my side in bed. My partner, Leo, is behind me, one arm draped over my waist. The room is dark but familiar. Our bedroom, or at least, I'm pretty sure it's our bedroom. My top arm is kind of hanging at this weird angle, like my elbow is bent and my hand is floating at about a 45-degree angle. I can feel it there, heavy and suspended, and I'm trying to remember if I'd shoved a pillow under it. I don't think I did. I go to move my arm. Nothing. Okay, maybe I'm just groggy. I try to roll over. Still nothing. I try to clear my throat and say, "Hey, Leo." And it's like the words get stuck somewhere between my brain and my mouth. No sound. My tongue might as well be made of stone. And that's when it hits me. This is sleep paralysis. As soon as I think that, my brain does that thing brains love to do. You know, it tries to make everything 10 times worse. It goes, "Oh, cool. We're doing sleep paralysis? How about a monster in the corner? Maybe something sitting on your chest?" I can feel that impulse, like a movie loading in the background. But another part of me is stubbornly going, "Nope, not real. We are not doing demons tonight." So I kind of mentally shove the idea away. Thankfully, nothing actually appears. No shadow person, no old hag, no glowing eyes. Just the dark room and this insane, suffocating stillness. The paralysis, though, that stays, and it is absolutely terrifying. The only things I can move, just barely, are my fingers and toes. So I start focusing on those. I'm kneading my fingers like I'm trying to squeeze life back into them, wiggling my toes as much as I can inside the blanket. It feels like trying to move underwater with concrete wrapped around me. I keep trying to call out to Leo. In my head, I'm screaming his name, but outside, I'm pretty sure it's just air. I'm straining with my whole body, like if I just try hard enough, I'll push a sound out. After what feels like several minutes, I manage this tiny, broken whisper. Honestly, more like air leaking out of a balloon than a real word. It's useless. he doesn't wake up. The panic starts spiking even more. My heart is racing, but my chest barely feels like it's moving. I keep working my fingers and toes, over and over, and finally my throat lets out this low, guttural sound. I'm trying to say, "Help, help, help," and it comes out like this repetitive, miserable moan. Definitely not the heroic cry for assistance I was hoping for. Still nothing from Leo. At this point, time is weird. It feels like I've been stuck there for ages, in this awful loop of try to move, fail. Try to speak, fail. Don't think about monsters, fail a little. Keep wiggling your toes. Somewhere in there, I managed to get the tiniest bit of control back in my arm. Just enough. So I focus everything on that one arm. It feels like lifting a car with a piece of spaghetti, but I drag it up in this big, clumsy arc, and I just let it fall. My hand smacks right into Leo's stomach. He jolts awake with this confused, "Oof, what the?" And as soon as he moves and speaks, it's like a spell snaps. Suddenly, I can breathe properly. I can move my legs, my arms, everything. The world rushes back in, loud and bright and solid, and I just start shuddering. He was honestly a saint about it. I smacked him awake in the middle of the night, and he just rubbed my back and said, "You're okay, I'm here." Instead of, "Why are you assaulting me in your sleep?" I definitely owe him a proper thank you when the sun's up, and I can form coherent sentences. Eventually, he drifts back to sleep. He has to work in the morning, and I'm left there, wide awake, heart still doing drum solos in my chest. Now, the funny part is, I know the science. I know that waking someone from deep, slow-wave sleep can be really hard. I know sleep paralysis tends to happen in that fuzzy zone between REM and slow-wave sleep, right where your brain is waking up, but your body hasn't caught up yet. I also know I already have a sleep quirk where, in that same stage, I sometimes lift my legs or hold them rigid in the air, like some kind of weird nighttime statue. It's just never happened with my arms before, and never with the full, awake but trapped in my body, bonus package. And here's the thing. All that rational explanation, all the "this is your brain misfiring" talk, it's comforting now, a little, as I tell you this. But in the moment, logic doesn't help. In the moment, it's just this raw, animal terror. I am awake, I am conscious, and I cannot move. It took me a solid hour to calm down afterward. My adrenaline was on a full tour of my nervous system, straight to my fingertips, my toes, everywhere. Even now I can feel that sort of shaky, hollow feeling you get after a big scare, where you know the crash is coming and you're going to be exhausted. Honestly, this was one of the most frightening things that's ever happened to me. No demon, no shadow figure, no supernatural anything. Just me, my own brain, my own body, and the horrible realization that I couldn't make it do what I wanted. If you're someone who goes through this regularly, you have my deepest, deepest sympathy. I've had exactly one episode, and I am really, sincerely hoping I never have to go through it again. So, this is a story I've never really told out loud before. When I was about 6 or 7, my family moved into this totally ordinary-looking rental in a little town in eastern New Mexico. We still call it the house on Willow Street, even now. It was one of those places where, on the outside, everything looks fine. Small yard, boring tan siding, quiet neighborhood. But inside, nobody was ever really okay. From the first few weeks, weird stuff kept happening. We'd hear footsteps when everyone was sitting in the living room. Cabinets would be half open, Things would be moved just enough to make you doubt yourself. My mom and dad, well, my dad Rob, argued constantly in that house. My older brother, Daniel, was always irritated. I was sick all the time. Just colds, stomach stuff, headaches, over and over. We only lived there for about a year before we moved on to base because of my dad's military posting, and every one of us was relieved to leave. My bedroom was down the hall, with this big window and a sliding closet door right across from my bed. I already had trouble sleeping as a kid, but in that house, it was like my body refused to relax. I'd just lie there, wired and uneasy for no obvious reason. One winter night, I remember snow was falling, the kind that drifts slowly and makes everything feel muffled. I was tossing and turning, and I rolled over so I could watch the snow through my window, because that usually calmed me down. As I'm staring at the glass, I noticed this thing. It looked like a brown leaf, just spinning in place in midair, perfectly horizontal, right in front of the window. Nothing above it, nothing below it. No string, no spider web, no nothing. Just spinning, slowly. My first thought was literally, that's weird. I wasn't scared yet, just confused. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I realized something was off in my closet. My closet door was open like it usually was. I turned my head, and I saw a figure standing there, just inside the closet, like it had always been there. The best way I can describe it is like one of those paintings of Jesus, tall, with what looked like a long robe and shoulder-length hair. But it wasn't a normal person. It was a black outline, almost like a shadow that had peeled itself off the wall. I couldn't see any facial features, no details on the clothes, just a clear shape of a man. And the eyes. The eyes were this bright, unnatural yellow-green, glowing in the dark, locked straight on me. I froze, completely. I remember every part of my brain scrambling to make it ordinary. It's a coat. It's a trick of the light. I'm just tired. It's a dream. But the longer I stared, the more I knew it wasn't any of those things. The outline didn't waver. The eyes didn't blink. It was just there, silently watching. I opened my mouth to yell for my mom or my dad, but right before I could, something in me just screamed, "Do not do that. That's a bad idea." It didn't sound like a voice from outside. It felt like this instinct, this warning in the very back of my mind. So I didn't call out. I don't know how long I lay there, just staring at it, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. It didn't move toward me. It didn't raise an arm. It didn't speak. It just stood in the closet, glowing eyes fixed on me like it was studying me. And then I did something that, to this day, makes no sense for me as a scared little kid. I slowly turned over in bed so my back was to the closet, facing the wall. Every part of me was screaming not to, but at the same time I had this weird, calm feeling that if I just ignored it, if I didn't acknowledge it, then it would leave me alone. Somehow I fell asleep. I still don't understand how, but I did. The next morning, the snow was still outside. My room looked totally normal, and the closet was just a closet again. The leaf that had been spinning in midair, gone. I looked on the windowsill, on the floor, in my bed, even inside the closet. Nothing. It was like it had never existed. Ever since that night, I cannot sleep with a closet door open. Doesn't matter where I am, my own place, a friend's house, a hotel, whatever. If there's a closet, that door is getting shut before I lie down. If I wake up in the middle of the night and realize a closet is open, my body goes straight into panic mode. heart racing, skin cold, that same old dread flooding in, like I'm back in that bedroom again. And just to be clear, I wasn't a kid obsessed with horror. I hadn't been watching ghost movies or alien documentaries. I didn't listen to scary stories. There wasn't anything like that feeding my imagination at the time. That house scared me on its own. People sometimes ask if maybe I was just dreaming, but I know how hard it was for me to even fall asleep there. I was wide awake, uncomfortable, and restless before any of this happened. The memory feels like being awake, not like a dream that fades and blurs. Not long after we finally moved out of the house on Willow Street and onto base, my health did this dramatic turnaround. I stopped getting sick all the time. I felt lighter. The constant heaviness I'd felt there just lifted. My parents did end up divorcing later on, but I'm pretty sure that was its own separate mess, not a ghost's fault. I never saw anything like that figure again. No glowing eyes in closets, no spinning leaves, nothing. Just that one night. Sometimes I wonder what exactly it was. I mean, yeah, it was New Mexico. People always joke about aliens. But whatever that thing was, it didn't feel extraterrestrial to me. It felt old, ancient, like it belonged to some completely different time. I never got the sense it was trying to hurt me. It felt more like it was observing me, curious in a way that was still terrifying. There's one more piece of this that I always hesitate to mention, but I feel like it might matter. The year before we moved into that house, I had this friend, let's call her Kayla, who got really obsessed with trying to summon the devil using a mirror. She'd read about it somewhere and was always trying to get me to do it with her. I was freaked out and never participated. I wanted no part of that. I wouldn't even be in the room when she did it. I've always wondered, though, if she actually managed to stir something up. And if, even though I refused to join, maybe something noticed me anyway. Maybe it followed me. Or maybe the house on Willow Street already had its own resident, and all of that was just an awful coincidence. I don't know. What I do know is this. That night in my bedroom felt real. The way my chest locks up around open closets now feels real. I can still see that outline in the doorway of the closet, and those glowing yellow-green eyes, as clearly as if it's burned into the back of my mind. So yeah, that's my story. So, let me take you back a few winters ago. I was renting this old, slightly crooked cottage out on the Kintyre Peninsula in western Scotland. It sat on its own at the end of a single-track road, maybe 15 miles from the nearest town. The place had originally been built for estate workers, shepherds, and farmhands a couple of generations back, and you could feel that history in the stone walls. It was beautiful, but it was isolated. On a windy night, you really knew you were alone. One night in early December, I went to bed as usual. I remember lying on my back, half asleep, watching my breath fog slightly in the cold room. And then, from somewhere above and to my right, I started to hear music. Not just any music. It was the bright, joyful sound of a brass band, clear as day. Trumpets, trombones, that sort of jaunty rhythm you'd expect from a parade or a school concert. Only this was close. Too close. It was as if they were marching somewhere just above my head, in the darkness. As I was trying to make sense of it, I suddenly felt the covers on my right side lift, as if someone were gently peeling them back. A cold draft slid in, and then an icy presence, like a halo of cold, drifted in toward my shoulder. Every instinct in me was screaming, "Move, get up, run." But I couldn't move at all. I was completely pinned. That's when the panic really hit. My heart was racing, my throat was dry, and it felt like my body just refused to respond. As that fear peaked, I became fully awake, wide awake, and that's when I saw it. In the far corner of the room, above a little chest of drawers, there was this egg-shaped form. Not solid, not like in a movie, more the color of mist, a sort of pale, cloudy oval, just hanging there, not doing anything dramatic, just present. I lay there staring at it, frozen, until at some point I must have just dropped off to sleep out of sheer exhaustion. The next night, though, I decided I wasn't going to lie there in terror waiting for it to happen again. So before I went to bed, I stood in that same bedroom, facing the corner where I'd seen the misty shape, and I actually spoke out loud. I said, "Listen, I don't mind if you're here. If you want to share the bed, I'll just take the other side. Just maybe don't scare me half to death this time, all right?" I felt ridiculous, talking to an empty corner, but I also felt strangely sincere, like I was talking to an actual person. That night, there was no icy halo, no covers lifting, no misty shape in the corner. But each time I was just about to fall asleep, I was jolted awake by loud noise from the attic above my head. Heavy, dragging sounds, like someone was pulling trunks or furniture across the floor up there. Long, scraping movements, then silence. Just as I'd start drifting off again, bang, more dragging. By morning, I was exhausted. The next day, my new neighbor dropped by to introduce herself. Her name was Moira, a cheerful woman in her 50s with that warm, practical Scottish manner. When she asked if she could bring her dog in, I said yes immediately. I was very curious how an animal might react in the house. Her dog was a young black Labrador, all wagging tail and enthusiasm. As soon as I opened the door, he bounded inside, gave me a quick sniff of approval, and then bolted straight down the hallway toward the bathroom, as if he already knew the layout. And then he just stopped. He froze in the bathroom doorway, stared up at the point where the wall met the ceiling, exactly where the attic space would be, and his whole body language changed. His tail dropped. He whimpered once, low and uncertain, and then he turned and ran straight back out the front door, pulling Moira with him. She laughed it off. I didn't. Lena listened quietly, and then said, very matter-of-factly, "Look, I think some ghosts are just people who died without fulfilling what their heart really wanted. They sort of hang around. You did the right thing talking to it, acknowledging it. That can make it easier for them to move on." That idea stayed with me more than I expected. I also asked the owner of the cottage, a woman named Margaret, if she knew of anyone who had died in the house. She frowned and said she honestly didn't know. People had come and gone over the years, and the history was a bit patchy. Nothing dramatic she was aware of, though. That night, I was heading to the bathroom in my dressing gown. The house was dark and quiet, just the wind outside and the faint creaks of old timber settling. As I stepped into the hallway and looked up toward that same patch of ceiling that had spooked the dog, the air there felt different, thicker, heavy almost, like the atmosphere had a weight to it in that one place. On impulse, without really planning to, I stopped, looked up, and spoke. I said, "Hey, you know, it's okay. You don't have to stay here. It's all right for you to leave now. You're allowed." The moment the words left my mouth, I felt something. It was like a fine sprinkling of energy fell gently over me, but not onto my skin, more onto the outline of me, just outside my physical body. Almost as if someone had traced me in a soft, tingling shimmer. It lasted only a second or two, but it was unmistakable. And then I suddenly felt very emotional. Not terrified, just moved. I found myself right on the verge of tears without really knowing why. From that night on, the house was different. The dragging sounds in the attic stopped. The oppressive feeling in that corner of the bedroom went away. I still had the occasional creak or groan that any old cottage has, but the presence, that sense of someone else being there, lifted. The place felt lighter, calmer, peaceful. Life settled back into its quiet rhythm. A couple of months later, I got a notice from the postal service that I had a recorded delivery parcel waiting at the office in town. So I drove into town on one of those rare, bright winter days, collected the envelope, a manila one with US postage on it, and wandered out into the street. There was a little sun trap on the corner by the post office, and I decided to stand there to open it. The envelope felt like it had documents inside, papers, nothing else. I was just slipping my thumb under the flap when, from my right, I heard it again. That same joyful, brassy music. This time, it wasn't in a dark bedroom. It was a real school brass band marching up the street in front of me. Kids in uniforms, cheeks puffed out, trumpets gleaming, drums keeping time. They were playing a lively tune, exactly the kind of thing I'd heard in the cottage that first night. The sound washed over me almost identically. I just stood there, envelope in hand, watching them pass, feeling this strange sense of déjà vu and completion, like two moments in time had neatly folded onto each other. When the band turned the corner and the music faded, I finally opened the envelope. Inside were divorce papers from a woman I'd married years before, a woman named Claire, whom I'd already been separated from for quite some time. The legal ending of a chapter that had, in my heart, ended long before. And standing there in that patch of winter sun, with the echo of the brass band still ringing in my ears, I had this quiet, unmistakable feeling. Something, someone, had finally been able to move on. And, in a way, so had I. So, let me just talk to you like I would a friend on the couch, okay? When I was around, I don't know, maybe 13 or 14, I went through this really strange period in my life. At the time, it just felt normal weird, like one of those things you just live with and don't question. Only now, looking back, I kind of wonder if there was something else going on. Back then, I was really struggling. I didn't have some big dramatic event happen, but my mental health was just bad, really bad. I was dealing with heavy depression, and there was self-harm in the mix. It went on for over a year, maybe closer to a year and a half. I didn't really talk about it, so I just sort of lived inside my own head a lot. And during that time, I kept smelling this smell. It would show up literally anywhere. At home, at school, walking in the grocery store with my mom, sitting on the bus, just out of nowhere. Then it would disappear a few seconds later. The best way I could describe it was this intense burnt vegetable smell. For me, it was like if you forgot a tray of Brussels sprouts in the oven for half an hour too long, until they're black and crispy and bitter. Sometimes it even reminded me of burnt cabbage or burnt coffee grounds mixed in. It was sharp and smoky, but not like a house on fire smell, just burnt sprouts. I remember one time I was sitting on the floor in the living room with my cousin Mia, and I wrinkled my nose and went, "Ugh, do you smell that? Someone totally cremated the Brussels sprouts." She just stared at me and was like, "What are you talking about?" There was nothing. No food cooking, no weird candle, Nothing. She sniffed the air and just looked really confused. Meanwhile, for me, it was so strong I almost felt sick. It started happening so often, multiple times a day, that I began to think something in my nose was messed up. Like rotting or infected or something. I even checked in the mirror a few times because I was convinced something was wrong up there. But the smell itself didn't smell like decay. It was specifically that burnt, bitter, charred Brussels sprout thing. This went on for close to a year, on and off. Around the same time, I started waking up in the middle of the night. Not just once in a while, but pretty much every night. And it was always around the same time, about 3 a.m. I'd roll over, check my cheap little digital clock, and it would say something like 3:01, or 3:13, or 3:30, or 3:33, always in that 3 o'clock zone. It got to the point where I would wake up and know before I even looked that it was going to be sometime around 3. I told myself it was probably because I was depressed and sleeping restlessly. You know, overthinking, scrolling on my phone too late, that kind of thing. So I just brushed it off. But it was eerily consistent. Now, I've always had really vivid dreams, even as a kid. And sometimes when I wake up suddenly from a dream, I'll see things in my room for a few seconds, like my brain hasn't fully switched over yet. There were a few times I woke up and saw animals that weren't there. Once I remember seeing a small deer standing next to my desk, just kind of looking at me. Another time I saw what looked like birds running up my wall like squirrels. They'd be there for a moment, and then my vision would clear and they'd vanish. The scariest one, though, was when I woke up and saw this marionette, like a puppet, with those thin, dangling limbs, just standing near the corner of my room. I blinked a few times, and it slowly faded away. I never screamed or anything. I had kind of trained myself to just shut my eyes and wait for it to pass. But then, there was her. I started having recurring dreams about a girl I had never seen before in my life. Dark hair, palish skin, eyes that felt way too aware, if that makes sense. I woke up shaking and crying, and I remember lying there in the dark, trying to convince myself it was just a dream. But she showed up again. In the next dream, she was wearing this strange gown that looked like it was made from straw or dried reeds, almost like something from a harvest ritual. She was standing in a field, not moving, just watching me. I couldn't get close to her, but I couldn't wake up either. It had that heavy, trapped feeling dreams sometimes have. The third time, she wasn't in my dream world anymore. She was at my window. In the dream, I was in my actual bedroom, everything exactly where it was in real life. I turned my head toward the window, and there she was, outside, staring in at me through the glass. Same face, same dark hair, straw-like gown. No banging, no screaming, just watching. I woke up from that one and refused to look at my window for a solid minute. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, telling myself, don't look, don't look, don't look. And yes, when I finally did look at the clock, of course, it was a little after 3 a.m. The last thing I remember from that period, and this is the one that makes me wonder if it was really just in my head, happened with my sister. We were sharing a room at the time, both asleep. And then, out of nowhere, we bolted upright at the exact same time, because we both heard someone scream in our ears. Not like a distant scream from outside. I mean right there, like someone was leaning over the bed between us and yelling. It was so loud and so close that my ears actually rang afterward. My sister and I just stared at each other, wide-eyed, like, "Did you hear that too?" And she nodded. Neither of us wanted to get out of bed to check anything. We just lay there, frozen, until we eventually forced ourselves back to sleep. None of these things, on their own, felt like proof of anything. At the time, I bundled everything up under, "I'm depressed, I have weird dreams, my brain is being dramatic." But talking about it years later with my roommate, Nora, all these little memories started piling up. The burnt Brussels sprout smell that no one else noticed, waking up around 3 a.m. every single night, the girl in my dreams with the straw dress and that unnerving, calm stare, the scream that both me and my sister heard at the same time. And now I catch myself wondering, was that just mental health stuff and an overactive imagination? Or was there something else hanging around me during that time? I don't really have a neat conclusion here. I'm not claiming I was definitely haunted or anything. I just know that when I put all the pieces together, it feels strange that I didn't question it more back then. Anyway, that's the story. If you've ever had anything similar happen, smells no one else can smell, the same time on the clock every night, recurring dreams of the same person, you're definitely not alone. So, let me take you back for a second. When I was a kid, my mom used to pile me and my little brother into this old blue station wagon and drive us out to my grandparents' place in rural Tennessee a couple times a month. It was about a 3.5-hour drive if traffic was kind, mostly highway. But the last stretch was all back roads, just fields, woods, and the occasional rusted mailbox leaning like it was tired. This one night, we'd left later than usual. I remember I'd fallen asleep against the window and woke up to the sound of rain, that soft but steady drumming on the roof. The wipers were doing that squeaky, complaining swipe across the windshield, and outside it was just black. No streetlights, no other cars, just our headlights cutting this narrow tunnel through the dark. We were on this long, empty stretch, Route 17, I think, when the car suddenly slowed. I felt my mom, Elena, ease off the gas, and I sat up to see what she was looking at. That's when I saw her. There was someone standing on the shoulder of the road, just barely within the beam of the headlights. Looked like a woman, barefoot, wearing this thin, almost old-fashioned white dress that stuck to her legs in the rain. Her head was tilted down, hair hanging forward so you couldn't see her face. And the thing that really got me, even as a kid, was how still she was. No shivering, no shifting her weight, just standing there in the rain like it didn't bother her at all. My mom slowed almost to a crawl. I remember her glancing at me, then back at the woman, clearly trying to decide what to do. Finally, she cracked her window just an inch, just enough for her voice to carry, and called out, "Ma'am, you okay?" The woman didn't answer, didn't even look up. For a second, I thought maybe she hadn't heard us. But then, very slowly, she lifted her arm and pointed straight down the road. That was it. No words, no eye contact, just that slow, deliberate gesture. My mom frowned, kind of muttered, "That's weird," under her breath, but she rolled the window back up and kept creeping forward, real cautious now. We went maybe another 100 feet, maybe a little more, and then her whole body jerked as she slammed the brakes. Right there in the glare of the headlights was this massive oak tree, completely down, sprawled across both lanes. Big branches everywhere, slick with rain. If we'd kept going at normal speed, there was no way we would have stopped in time. We would have hit it, no question. My heart was pounding, and I remember my mom's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. She just kept saying, "Oh my God, oh my God," under her breath. After a few seconds, she put the car in park, took this deep breath, and said, We need to thank her." So she turned around to look back, and there was no one there. The shoulder of the road was empty. No figure, no movement. Just rain and darkness and the weird, hollow sound of it all. My mom backed the car up a little, trying to shine the headlights around. Nothing. She even rolled the window down again and called out, "Hello? Ma'am?" But there was no answer. No sound except the rain. What really sent a chill through me was when she pulled over and checked the mud and gravel on the side of the road. I watched her through the windshield, her hair getting soaked, scanning the ground with the little flashlight she kept in the glove compartment. There were no footprints, just tire tracks and rain. Eventually, she climbed back in, dripping wet, and just sat there for a moment, breathing hard. Then she put the car in reverse, turned us around as carefully as she could, and we took a completely different route to my grandparents' place. My mom told them what happened, about the woman, about the tree, about how close we'd come to plowing right into it. You could see my grandparents exchange this look, like they knew something but didn't want to say it in front of us kids. After we got settled in, my mom used their old landline to call the county sheriff's office and report the fallen tree, just so nobody else would come flying down that road and hit it. She talked to a deputy, Deputy Collins. I remember the name because she said it out loud. And after she explained where the tree was, there was this little pause on the line. Then he kind of sighed and said, real casual, but with this undertone, "Yeah, that's a bad stretch out there. You're not the first folks to see a woman on that road." My mom just went quiet. Later, after my brother was asleep, I asked her, "Do you think she was, a ghost?" She didn't answer right away. She just pulled the blanket up around my shoulders, brushed my hair back, and said, "I don't know what she was, but whoever or whatever she was, she helped us. That's enough for me." And even now, all these years later, I can still see her in my mind as clear as the night it happened. Barefoot, in the rain, dress clinging to her legs, standing perfectly still on the side of Route 17, just waiting for someone who needed to be warned.